Hello friends, welcome to Universe of Naruto X. If you love Naruto what if stories and anime explanations, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Now let's begin today's story. Enoi had given his report on what had happened the previous Naruto's apartment. To say that the Hokage was worried was an understatement. He wanted to leave the office immediately to see how the boy was doing after hearing that he went through hours of pain. Although he didn't know from what he would be sure to ask the boy later since he couldn't leave his paperwork. Are you sure that Naruto is all right? Eniki nodded his head. Yes, from when I saw he was still alive, but he was in a lot of pain. You should check on the boy when you can. Hai agreed, thinking he could meet the boy for dinner later. I guess I'll have to meet him after I finish doing my paperwork. Thank you, Inoichi. Hai nodded his head as he watched the shinobi leave his office. After he was alone in his office, he sat in his chair and giving a tired sigh, he looked out the window and just thought, Naruto, what exactly is happening with you? Konoha streets after team training. Ino was making her way back home after she had a three-way sparring match with her team. And based on how she was stomping down the street, she was not happy. Argai can't wait till I get home so I can get the dirt off me. My outfit is ruined because of that free-for-all that Asuma-sensei made us do. I am so going to get him to pay for my next shopping trip. She would have kept her rant going if it wasn't for the fact that she had bumped into someone causing both to fall on there, and due to her mood she was not in an apologetic mood. Hey, watch where your forehead. The person she had bumped into was her ex-friend Sakura, but she looked miserable. Sakura wasn't looking where she was going. In her depressed state, she had been walking aimlessly through Konoha, not even sure if she was going home. Oh do. Hey, Ino. She would have called Ino by the nickname she usually used, but she had other things on her mind. Ino had gotten up and looked down at Sakura. She had never seen Sakura look so depressed, and Ino could see the puffy red eyes, which meant that she had been crying. And even if they stopped being friends when they both liked Sasuke, she didn't like seeing her like this. Okay, Sakura, what happened? I haven't seen you like this before. Sakura just got back up and just started walking again. It's nothing, Ino. She would have kept walking, but Ino grabbed her by the wrist and started to drag her away. Oh, no you don't. We are going to get you something that I know will cheer you up, Ino said, heading off towards the shops. Sakura didn't have the energy to deny her escape from Ino, so she just let herself be dragged away. 1 hour later at an ice cream parlor, Ino and Sakura had spent 45 minutes on a clothing shopping spree, but Sakura just wouldn't cheer up. Ino had even seen Sakura pick up a beautiful yellow sundress that would have looked good on her and just put it back without even thinking about getting it. Ino decided that they would cut the spree short and go get a frozen treat, thinking that it would help. But so far, it only brought up Sakura's spirits a bit. Sakura had been staring at her ice cream for 7 minutes without taking a bite, and Ino was really wanted to know what was eating at her. Okay, Sakura, what happened that made you this sad? Sakura was startled by the question and lifted her head to look at Ino for a few seconds before she gave a heavy sigh and stared at her ice cream again. Ino was about to ask again with more force this time, but she stopped when she had finally heard Sakura speak. Ino, am I useless? Out of many things that might have made Sakura this way, this was not on the list Ino had. She was taken aback from this question and wanted answers. Why would you think that, Sakura? You are the smartest girl in our class. You got the title of top kunoichi and are on a team with Sasaki and Naruto. At the name of her teammates, Sakura's eyes started to water a bit with the words from her blonde teammate. If you haven't realized it yet, he doesn't care about anyone but himself. Every time I saw you two talk, he would just push you aside and say no. For Sakura, he doesn't care about you. You are nothing more than dead weight. Even if he did care and tried to save you, he could get himself killed in doing so. So get out of your fantasy and get back to the real world. Sakura started to cry, remembering how Naruto had yelled at her. Ino got up from her chair and went to Sakura's side, gently grabbing hold of her shoulders. Sakura, tell me what happened. Sakura lifted her head and looked at Ino. Well, it happened during training. Sakura had told Ino everything that happened when the team met, from Naruto walking to them in his injured state to the spar and then to the conversation that they both had. After Ino had heard everything, she was furious. How can he say that to you? He has no right to say that to anyone. Sakura wanted to calm Ino down a bit since she was thinking about what he said and was little by little seeing some truth in it. But it still hurt her. Ino, it's all right. Sakura said in a quiet voice, which Ino did not hear. I am not going to stand here and let this slide. Ino said as she started to leave the parlor. Sakura reached out to stop Ino, but she didn't move from her seat. Ino, wait. Don't. But Ino had already started running down the street to find Nar. I think he was right. Sakura thought as more tears rolled down her cheeks. Meanwhile, with Naruto was making his way to Ikyaku's to get some of his favorite ramen, thinking he would feel better after a few bowls or 20 feet. Why did I say that to Sakura? I mean, it was kind of true, but I feel like a jerk for yelling at her. I should apologize tomorrow before we start our mission. He was pulled out of his thoughts when he felt someone tap his shoulder, and turning, he saw that it was Iruku looking at him with worry in his eyes. Naruto, I was hoping to catch you. Then noticed that Nar was holding his ribs and became even more worried. You okay after last night? Nar nodded his head. Yeah, I'm fine. Well, I will be after I eat, he said after he winced. Iruka saw it and decided to treat the boy. I'll treat you a few bowls of ramen. Come on. They had made it to the stand and both were shocked to see the Hokage standing just outside waiting for them. Hello, Naruto. I was hoping to speak with you over lunch about what exactly happened yesterday. Nar didn't want to think about what happened yesterday since it hurt to think about it. Not to mention that he was still in pain from it, but he just agreed to it and entered the ramen stand. Ayame had seen Naruto enter the stand and was immediately worried seeing him in pain. And in the blink of an eye, she was past the counter and by his side looking him over and asking questions about why he was hurt. Ayame Ne-chan, it's okay. I just trained too much last night, really. Unfortunately, Ayame didn't believe any of what he had just said. Nar, don't lie to me. What really happened to you? Were you attacked again? She said in a stern voice, not liking how Naruto lied to her when she was worried about the boy's health. Tuki had walked out to see the two and had heard some of the conversation, but he also saw how the boy seemed to struggle to stand. Nar, you should really trust us enough to tell us the truth about what happened to you. We care about what happens to you. Hai and Iruka just stood back looking at the concern from the young woman and her father. Hai began to think about the situation with the boy. Sometimes secrets can hurt more than the truth. Sigh. The boy has too many secrets in his life. Maybe telling this one to those who won't care about it will help him. And these two deserve to know about Naruto's problem but not the full details. He looked to the boy who looked like he was trying to think of something to say. Nar, maybe you should tell them about your condition. Nar looked back to the Hokage with wide eyes, but Gigi. Hai lifted his hand. It is okay, Nar. I don't believe that these 2 inches he started while gesture to the father and daughter will change their opinion on you. No matter what has happened to you, just leave out some of the more gruesome details, but I would like the entire truth about you and your friend. Naruto was starting to think that he should have stayed home today with how the day seems to be going. He is in pain. He had yelled at his teammate after sparring with the temp and now he has to tell 2 people he cares about the truth as well as the Hokage his relationship with Ramatu-sama. How could this get any worse? 18 bowls of ramen later or 20 minutes later, Nar had started feeling better after his 5th bowl and just kept eating till he was satisfied. As he was eating, he had told Ayame and Tuki about what happened on his 8th birthday and when he graduated, but left out some of the heavier details. The 2 ramen stand owners were stunned, silent when they heard what happened, with Tuki clenching his fist in anger about how a people would do that to the boy, and Ayame was in tears about how Naruto had died on his birthday. Ayame moved away from the stove that had the pot of ramen she was cooking and walked to the boy and gently hugged the boy, trying not to hurt him. You shouldn't have to hide this from us. We wouldn't have changed our thoughts about you. Auto Nar just enjoyed the hug, happy that they didn't change their thought about him. After they separated from the hug, Naruto turned to the Hokage and Iruka who were sitting next to him. It was Iruka that broke the silence first. Well, Nar, would you mind telling us what happened to you last night? What exactly did you go through that caused so much noise? Nar had spent another few minutes telling them what he went through. He got the same reactions from the 4 listening as he did from Enko and Hana. You are not doing that again. All 4 yelled at him, making the people passing by outside the bar to stop and stare at them. But when they saw Nar, they just scoffed and kept walking. Nar jumped in the air from the yell, hitting his head on the ceiling and fell on his while he clutched his ears. Ow. Can you guys not yell, please? I still have my hearing and my body is still sore. Sorry, they all said looking sheepish. Hai cleared his throat to get the attention from everyone. Nar, I would like it if you would not use that method again. I will try and find a way for you when I can. Nar nodded his head. I hope so. Even I don't want to do that again, he said, getting a few chuckles from the shinobi. After a few more bowls, everyone had to go back to their duties. And Naruto wanted to get some rest because although the ramen helped him, he still felt sore and still held his ribs. Walking towards his home with the thought of heading straight to bed, almost home just a few miles. As he was walking, he stopped when he saw Ino walking in his direction and he could feel the anger coming off her. Wonder what's up with her. As Ino came closer, Naruto stood a bit straighter, but still kept his holding his rib. Hey Enoch-chan, is something wrong? He said a little strained, not only from the pain, but from the negative emotions from not only Ino, but the surrounding villagers. Ino got right into his face. You jerk. How could you say stuff like that to Sakura? She said while poking him in the chest, so angry that she didn't even notice that she was hurting him. Nar stood there for a second after hearing what she said. Enoch-chan while Ino kept poking Naruto's chest as she kept going, pushing him back a bit and saying that Sasaki only cares about himself. How can you say something like that? Nar gritted his teeth, feeling his anger rising from the emotions and the words, I only said what was true. Sakura lacks training and only fawns over Sasaki. But all Sasuke cares about is himself and his revenge. He doesn't care about the village, his team, Sakura, or yo. Slap. Naruto's head was turned harshly with eyes wide open. He slowly puts his hand on his left cheek and slowly turned his head to see Ino, who still had her right hand swung to the side. You don't know anything. You're nothing but the dobe of the class. Nar stood there, eyes still wide and hand on his cheek as he stares at Ino. But as he stood, he could still hear the whispers. Serves that demon right. Ya put that monster in its place. How dare that monster badmouth Sasaki-sama. Demon monster. Demon monster. Monster. Nar felt his anger rise with every word he heard and balling his fist which caused them to bleed from his elongate nails. He got into her face. Fine. Believe what you want. See if I care. Nar turned around to leave but stopped when he heard Ino say one more thing as she threw her arms down in anger. Don't ever speak to me again. Naruto didn't turn to face her. He just turned his head slightly, still not looking at her and said in a softer tone, okay, I promise. And he jumped to the rooftops to make it home faster, ignoring the protests of his body. Ino just turned around and headed home. And everyone in her way just let her pass, seeing the angry look in her eyes. Naruto's apartment. Nar just barged into his apartment, making the door swing hard, and he slammed the door shut. Ripping off his sandals, undoing his sash, and throwing away his jacket, he went to his sleeping corner in his bedroom corner and laid down on the pillow and blankets. He wished he was a fox right now, wanting to at least be comfortable with his tails. But he was stuck as a human for a few days. But he knew one way to be a fox again, so he closed his eyes, wishing for sleep. Naruto's mindscape. Entering his mindscape and a bit happier. He was a fox again, he just ran towards where he knew Ramachuchan would be. Making it to where Ramatuchan was, he just sat in front of the hollow tree waiting for him to come out. He didn't wait long as the second he got there, Rama was making his way out. Once out, Kurama looked down at Nar. Hey kid, you're a little earlier than usual. Kurama paused when he looked into the smaller fox's eyes and saw tears starting to form. Kit. Nar didn't say anything. He just quickly walked past Kurama to his tails. Somewhat thankful Kurama lowered them and jumped on one as he grabbed another with his paw and pulled it, forcing Kurama to move it to follow where Naruto wanted it. Naruto had completely covered himself with the second tail and didn't do anything else. Kurama would have asked what happened since he knows that the only time the kit does this is if he is sad, but he stopped when he heard so coming from his kit. Kurama looked up to see the night sky of the kit's mindscape was becoming cloudy with dark clouds and felt drops of rain starting to fall. He laid his head down to the side so he had an eye on where the kit was in his tails as just stayed that was as the sobs of the boy echoed through the forest that comprised his mindscape. Kurama focused a bit to see Naruto's memories of the day and saw what caused this. Oi, he thought as he laid there. Ino's house flower shop. Ino stomped into the flower shop, walking past the counter, ignoring her mother, who had a look of worry, heading to the back which leads to the Yamanaka compound, heading up a set of stairs and into her room. Once in her room and slamming the door, she just jumped onto her bed that was on the straight ahead from the door against the wall and buried her face in her one of her 6 pillows. Lifting her head to look at her room, which was decent-sized room, a few feet away from her bed was a desk that had her makeup set, hair brushes, and mirror. Across from it was a large walk-in closet that held many different outfits, dresses, and shoes that she bought when on her shopping sprees. The left of the closet, 7 feet away from the foot of her bed, was her shinobi gear that had some kunai shuriken and a folded windmill shuriken hanging on a weapons rack hanging on the wall. Below it was a chest that held some storage scrolls and pouches of different color if she ever chose to spice up her shinobi look. In the corners of the wall where the door was were a coop of plants that gave the room some more color. The walls were a light violet color with flower patterns at the base. Looking at the window that was next to her bed, she saw a small flower vase that held a purple tiger lily, a gift from Nar after he picked it on one of his forest trips. In anger, she picked up the vase and lifted it over her head, ready to throw it to the wall. Stupid Nar. Stupid blonde-haired idiot. Stupid Dabi. She thought, pulling back her arm to throw Dot. But she couldn't. Bringing the vase in front of her, she began to think about what had happened. She had just yelled at Naruto for what he said to Sakura and about Sasaki not caring about her. Dot. And when she thought about how Nar reacted, she realized that Nar was holding his ribs, which reminded her of what Sakura said, that Nar was in a lot of pain when he arrived at their training grounds. She kept poking him in the chest and she remembered him wincing every time she did it. And then there was the slap. Why did I slap him? She remembered the hurt look in his eyes and the shock when she called him the Dabi of the class. She brought the vase with the flower closer to her chest. Who cares about the idiot? Why should I care about him when all he does is make trouble for everyone and badmouth other people? When did you get the earring? It suits you. Ino felt something wet on her cheeks and lifted her free hand to it to see it was water. Wah. She then realized they were tears. Wei Mie crossing crying. Her tried to hold in her tears causing her shoulders to shiver and she then remembered the last thing they said to each other. Don't ever speak to me again. Okay, I promise. Ino slipped off the bed and sat on the floor holding the flower tightly against her chest and cried. Why did I say that? Why did he have to promise that? One thing she found admirable about her fellow blonde was that whenever he made a promise, it seems he would go to the ends of the earth to make sure it happens. And now, because of this argument, she might have lost her closest friend. Ino sat there hunched over the flower and just let the sobs come out as they echoed through her room. The next day, Team 7 training ground. Nar was sitting on at the edge of the river with his feet in the water, leaning back on his hands and with his eyes looking at the mountains in the distance, but his eyes were unfocused. The world around him felt quiet, his ears could pick up the slow-flowing water, the wind blowing through the trees, and the birds chirping as they woke up, but none of it registered in his mind. He just sat there, waiting for his team to arrive. After a while, Sakura and Sasaki made it to the training grounds, and they noticed Naruto sitting at the riverbank. Both of them walked over to the blonde with Sasuke being the one to try and get his attention. Hey Dabi, what are you doing here so early? Nar didn't react to the question and still sat there. Sakura bent down to look at Naruto's face, but her eyes widened a bit when she saw the blank look on his face. Hey Nar, are you okay? She asked as she waved her hand in front of his face. Nar didn't even hear the questions asked him. He was startled when a hand on his shoulder shook him. Huh. Wah. He turned his head to see his teammates looking down on him. What is it? He asked them in a subdued voice. Sakura was somewhat concerned about him now. Yesterday he came looking like he was beaten down and now he seems like all the life was drained from him. Sasaki just scowled. TCH. How long were you sitting there, Dobi? I don't know. I think 2 hours maybe. Sakura's eyes grew wide as she stood up straight. But it's 6 a.m. right now. Yeah. They both just stood until Sasuke gave a response. HN, and walked away. Sakura stood there for a few seconds thinking about what to say, but she couldn't think of anything since Naruto and her weren't really friends, and she didn't know what made the blonde this way, so she just left to follow Sasaki. Nar sat there unmoving and waited. Team 10 training grounds. 9 a.m. Ino was dodging Choji's heavy strikes, trying to make sure she wasn't hit because although Choji's punches were slower, they had strength. Shikamaru was on the side playing shogi with Asuma who was trying to think of the next move. As she dodged and threw a punch to Choji's chest, causing the pudgy boy to flinch, the memory of the argument she had with Naruto popped into her head, which distracted her enough to not see the punch aimed for her head. She was sent a few feet away skidding on the ground which caused her to yelp in pain a bit and got the attention from her teammates. Choji was the first to walk up. Hey Ino, you okay? Sorry, didn't think I hit you that hard. It's fine Choji I was distracted. That's all. Ino said as she got up and dusted herself off a bit. Shikamaru looked at the girl and noticed a few things about her. She looked tired. Her eyes were red, which would show that she had recently cried. Her hair, even though it was in the usual ponytail style, looked like it was done quickly without the usual care she gave. And she didn't put on her arms warmers. Not sure what they are called. Troublesome blonde. If you have some issue that distracts you, you should get rid of the problem. Otherwise, it becomes troublesome was all he said as he went back to the shogi board. Asuma heard what Shikamaru said and looked at Ino and noticed the red eyes. Ino, what's wrong? Ino just shook her head. Nothing, Asuma. Sensei. Asuma took a drag from his cigarette. Ino, if something is bugging you, you should at least talk about it. Ino huffed and went to the side since her spar was done and was now Shikamaru's turn to spar with Choji. She sat down and spaced out, trying to get rid of the haunting thoughts in her head. 3 hours later, Ino was making her way home since today her team weren't doing missions this day. Ino had walked into the Yamanaka flower shop and would have kept going to her room, but was stopped by her mother, Naro. Oh, Ino, how was your training today? Ino turned to her mother. It was fine. I'm just tired. Naro nodded her head, understanding that her daughter's shinobi training would tire her out. She remembered how her husband would come back from his training and missions. Well, you can rest up a bit, but we will need your help in the shop later. Ino nodded her head, thinking that working at the shop would get her mind off things. As she started to walk again, her mother got her attention again. Oh, Ino, when you see Nar again, please tell him that his order is ready for pickup when he can. With all the orders he makes, I'm starting to think he was to make a forest of flowers and plants in his home. Ino stopped and looked back to see that her mother was holding a potted flower that had a tag on the pot with Naruto's name on it. Ino walked up to her mother and gently grabbed the pot and looked into her mother's eyes and gave a sad smile. I'll give it to him the next time I see him, and walked away to her room. Ino made it to her room and placed the flower next to the tiger lily on her windowsill. Sitting on her knees on her bed, she looked at the two flowers, the purple tiger lily and the orange begonia, and she felt more tears going down her face. I'm sorry. It had been a week since the argument with Ino and 3 days since the shift had ended. Naruto had asked the Hokage about a way to keep any noise from leaking out of his home, and lucky for him, the Hokage had some privacy seal tags on hand, although they only could be used once. Naruto asked that he be taught how to do it with hand signs, but he was told that it is a more advanced sealing skill to be able to use them through hand signs and would take too long to learn. Needless to say, Naruto was grumpy hearing this. The night he had to shift back, he used the tags on his room and got ready. He would have done it without guards this time because he didn't want to burden them with his cries of pain. But the Hokage would not hear of it since he was told of the mob that gathered the last time this happened. The Hokage had in small ambush squad with both Yuga and Tenzo. Hana and Anko were also there for emotional comfort since the Hokage thought that the sour mood he was his apprehension to changing back. Naruto had hoped that it wouldn't be as painful as before, but when it started, he realized that he wouldn't even be able to tell which hurt worse because all that was on his mind was the burning, crushing, and reshaping of his form. Now, he was at his team's training ground sparring with Sasaki, dodging all of the Uchiha's attacks. During his time shifted into his human form, he had a hard time sparring with his male teammate and lost a lot of them, causing Sasuke's ego to inflate, making him more arrogant and solidifying his superiority complex. But not back in his henge, he could fight like normal, beating the Uchiha without taking a hit. Sasaki was once again punched in the face, forcing him to take a few steps back and spitting out a glob of blood. Damn it, Dabi. Hold still, he said before throwing a right hook, which Nar dodged. Nar ducked under the right hook and then blocked the left swing before he spoke. Why should I even listen to that? If you want to hit something, go fight with the post. That's more your level 10. Nar was mad and it was showing with the scowl on his face and antagonizing Sasuke every chance he got. He wasn't even sure what he was mad at. Was he mad at Ino for the argument? Sakura for telling Ino about what he said? Sasaki for being the reason for what he said to Sakura? The villagers for their hatred affecting him, or himself for letting all of it get to him? He wasn't sure, but he wanted to hurt something, so he chose to use the only new move he could get right. Nar jumped back to get some distance and put his hands into his favorite hand sign. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 20 clones popped up and made a circle around the Uchiha. Sasaki smirked, knowing he could handle them since they went down with one hit. But his smirk dropped when every single clone and the original started to run in a circle counterclockwise around him. What the hell do you think you're doing, Dobi? Sakura and Kakashi were watching the spar from the sidelines, and Sakura was confused about what Naruto was doing, but Kakashi looked up from his little orange book and looked in interest. Wonder what he's doing. He could be using it as a distraction, but the original is in there as well, so it can't be to give him a chance to attack. Maybe to disorient Sasaki, would Nar even be able to think of that? He got his answer when he saw Nar. Sasaki was looking at the running group, turning around every other second to see what the Dobi was going to do. He was suddenly hit in the back of his left shoulder hard enough to turn him around just to see nothing. As he was looking, he got hit again in the back. Arg. What the hell? Sasaki kept turning around to see if he could see what hit him. He got his answer when he turned to his left just to feel Naruto's fist hit him hard, making Sasaki fall to the ground. What the hell? He was then lifted up from a kick to his face, and before he could even touch the ground, he got hit again on the side, then in the stomach, and then kicked in the arm and torso. This kept going for a few minutes until Sasaki hit the ground hard and stayed there on the ground, signifying his lose. Kakashi's eye widened when he saw what Naruto did. His clones were not meant for distraction. They were the attacking force. The clones running makes you lose sight of where the original is since the speed of the running makes the original blend in with the clones. And when Sasaki kept turning to find him, Naruto had one of the clones break from the group and hit him in the back before merging again in the gap left behind on the opposite side. That takes perfect timing. An attack can come from any side. Interesting move. If he used Kana, it could be deadly. Sakura couldn't really see what happened, but she knew that Naruto's move was useful. She had been unable to talk to him ever since they saw him at the stream. She had spent a few days thinking about what Naruto had said to her, and although she had gotten back to normal and considered all he said to be a lie, she still had the small voice in her head saying that he was telling the truth. In turn, she started trying to be nicer to him. But Naruto, for some reason, stayed in a bad mood, and she couldn't help but think it was her fault. Sasaki was now on the ground unconscious, and Naruto just stood there with a scowl on his face as he looked at the Uchiha. After a few seconds, Naruto just turned around and began to walk into the forest. Sakura and Kakashi, who put his book away, walked up to Sasaki, and Sakura got on her knees to check to see if Sasaki was okay. Kakashi looked over to Naruto, who made it to the edge of the forest. Hey Naruto-kun, where are you going? Naruto didn't respond and kept walking, which got Kakashi to look down and sigh. He looked to Sakura and Sasaki. Sakura-san, stay here with Sasaki while I go talk to Naruto . Sakura nodded her head and he leapt into the tree branches and quietly followed Nar. Nar made it to a small clearing a good distance away from his team and chose to sit down and try and rein in his anger. Finally away from them, he took a breath of air trying to bring down his growing agitation that had anger and hatred rolling off him when he was losing, and I can hardly focus with that in the air. After a few minutes, he sat against a tree and closed his eyes just to listen to the forest around him. It was only seconds later that Kakashi dropped from the trees, startling the boy. You know Naruto it's not nice to walk away from our team training exercises, he said as he gave his signature eye smile. Nar glared at Kakashi for disturbing his calming moment. I'm going to get you for this, Kakashi-sensei. Nar got up from his sitting position and looked at Kakashi. I just needed a minute to myself, Kakashi-sensei. Is Sasaki okay? He said the last bit with a foxy smile and mock concern in his voice. Kakashi shook his head. Mama Naruto-kun, you didn't have to go that far with the spar. He is unconscious right now and Sakura is taking care of him, but we should get back and continue training. Nar just sighed knowing that he won't get any time to himself and started to walk back. Fine, but I won that spar. Don't forget to tell him that when he wakes up, since he will demand a rematch thinking it was some mistake or something and I don't want to hear it. Kakashi just pulled out his Ika book and walked next to him. Sure, I'll tell him, he said in a disinterested tone. Nar looked at the little orange book and got an idea. I know how to get back at you now. Ha ha. He gained an evil look on his face, but Kakashi never noticed. Meanwhile, with Sakura and Sasaki, Sakura had spent a few minutes cleaning up some of the cuts on Sasaki's face, and in a quick decision, put his head on her lap. Internally, she was both giddy and worried. Giddy at the fact that she had Sasaki on her lap, but worried about how he might react. What if Naruto was right? What if Sasaki hates me? What if he only thinks I'm annoying? As Sakura thought this, Sasaki woke up and bolted up and stood up looking around. Where is he? Sakura looked confused about the question, but he kept going. Dabi, where are you? Come out here and fight me. Sakura just sat there looking at the angry Uchi, and Naruto's words went through her head again, and it just made her depressed. Sasaki-kun, you don't need to shout. We are right here and the spar between you two is over. Kakashi said as he and Naruto walked out of the forest with the blonde with his hands behind his head and a wide grin on his face. And Kakashi just kept his eyes on the words in his book and nose buried in the pages. Sasaki just scowled at the two and was about to demand another match, but Kakashi stopped him. Well, since our training is done, we should go and get our mission for today. Sasaki just gave his usual hen with his scowl growing. Sakura got up and gave a small smile. Okay, Kakashi-sensei, but her smile seemed a bit forced. Naruto's grinned even wider. Yes, hope we get something good, he said as he pumped his arm in the air. As they all left the training ground, Nar waited a few seconds before he asked, Hey, Kakashi-sensei. Kakashi turned his head to look at Naruto. What's up, Narun? On the inside, Nar was chuckling evilly. When can we get a harder mission? Kakashi just smiled at the question. When I think the team is ready. Nar just shrugged his shoulders but kept his smile, which grew bigger when he saw Kakashi turn back to his book. Kakashi turned to his book and began to read in his head. Single quote. Single quote. Single quote. Single quote. Single quote dot 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 single quote. Single quote dot 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 single quote dot. It took him a few seconds before his eye became as wide as a dinner plate as he realized that the words that he was supposed to be reading weren't there. In a panic, he started to turn the page back and forth and then flipped through the whole book and realized that all the pages were blank. He started to sweat and stopped, forcing everyone to stop and look at him as he kept flipping from the first page to the last and then in reverse. Where are the holy words? Where is the scene with Taylor and Elizabeth in the rain? Where is the scene in the hotel? What happened to my precious Sakura? Sasaki and Naruto watched as their sensei was on his knees and crying and looking through his book before all his color drained from his body before he collapsed onto the ground in a fetal position in gloom over him, dropping the book a few feet away from him. Sakura was the first to react and ran to him. Kakashi-sensei. What's wrong? Sasaki limped up to his pathetic L-looking sensei. What the hell is wrong with him? Neither of them noticed that the book disappeared in a small poof of smoke. Naruto turned back to the road and kept walking. After Naruto was a good distance away from his team, he broke down laughing. Ha 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 ha. That's gasp what you get. Gasp. Ha 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 ha. Out of the forest came a clone who was also laughing and holding a small book. After a minute, he caught his breath and took the book from the clone who then dispelled itself. He then looked at the book and put it in his weapons pouch before heading back. As he walked, he saw on his right a tiger lily growing on the path, and he stopped. He stared at it for a few seconds, putting his hand over his heart, feeling it hurt, until he turned away and kept walking to the village, no longer in a bright mood or caring if his team would get a mission today or not. Konoha streets the next day. Nar was jumping from rooftops after he had asked the Hokage if he could use another training ground since when he got to his team's training ground, Sasaki was already using it and Nar didn't want to deal with him. His team had no training or missions to do since Kakashi was for some reason unavailable. Maybe I should give it back to him. If he is going to be like this because he lost his precious book, then we will never get stronger. As he kept jumping, he caught a whiff of cinnamon and lavender, which caused him to stop and look down to the streets below. After a bit of looking, he saw Hinata walking down the street with her head tilted down, and he could feel the anxiousness and depression. I feel like I use that word a lot, coming from her. I wonder what's wrong, he thought before jumping down to land behind her. Hinata had lost to her little sister again and got scolded by her father again. And although her mother had tried to comfort her and tell her she shouldn't worry about it, she just felt like a failure. I just can't hurt Chan. Even if T2-sama says it's necessary to remove your feelings to be a proper shinobi, I am not able to do so. So deep in thought, she didn't even notice that Nar was walking right behind her. First, looking over her left shoulder before moving to her right shoulder. Nar kept looking over Hinata's shoulder before he decided to get her attention. Hey, Hinata-chan. Hinata was so shocked that she jumped a few feet in the air and gave out a loud eep. Naruto chuckled a bit before he got in front of her and held out his hand. Sorry, Hinata-chan, but I couldn't help myself. Hinata blushed so much that her face was now red, but she slowly reached up and took his hand and got up. IIIAR nar KK underscore. Naruto chuckled a bit at how much she can change her mood in a second, but that just reminded him of her sour mood a few moments ago. Hey, Hinata, I'm about to head to a training ground Hokage said I could use. Wanna, come and train with me, he said as he pointed his finger in the direction he was heading. Hinata on her part had her mind stop for a second and through selective hearing she heard. Come with me. She tried her hardest not to faint but was so close to losing. She nodded her head slowly and was brought back from consciousness when Naruto smiled at her and grabbed her hand before tugging a bit to show his excitement. Great, let's go. And then she saw him jump to the roof to start their journey. She stood there in a daze for a second before she shook her head and in a panic jumped after Nar. Training Ground 37. Nar and Hinata had arrived at the training grounds, which was a wide circular field surrounded by trees. A simple training ground, but Nar didn't mind. As Hinata looked around the training field, she finally realized that she was alone with Naruto and began to blush again. I am alone with NNN Naruto-kun. She began to whittle her fingers looking at the ground. Naruto turned to Hinata and let his curiosity beat him. Hey Hinata-chan, what had you in a sad mood earlier when I found you? Pulled out of her thoughts, she replayed the question in her head. It's nothing Naruto. Naruto didn't like lying and it hurt him a bit when Hinata did it. Hinata-chan, please don't lie to me. Please tell me, maybe I can help. Hinata was happy to hear that Naruto was willing to help her, but became a little sad remembering what happened at her compound. And with them being alone, she felt like she could tell him. WWN Nurid underscore, it was after me and HH Hanabar. Flashback. Hinata was laying on the ground after she had lost another spar with her little sister Hanab. Hinata got onto a sitting position as her father walked up to her. Hiyashi looked down on his eldest daughter and gave a disappointed sigh while shaking his head. I expected more from you. You are older by 5 years and yet you failed to defeat your younger sister. Hai turned around and began to walk away. It seems I overestimated you. Such a disappointment. Hanab stood a few feet away looking at the scene and saw the hurt look her sister got from their father's words, but she couldn't say anything. Oni-chan, their father, had left. Hinata got up and left, and after she got cleaned up and dressed in her normal shinobi attire, she started making her way to the gate of the compound. Before she made it, her mother had walked up to her with a sad look on her face. Hitomi had lowered herself to be at eye level with Hinata and placed her hands in her daughter's shoulders. Hinata-chan, are you all right? She spoke in a soft tone, trying to comfort Hinata. Hinata looked in her mother's eyes and nodded slowly and softly said, Heyoka-sama, I'm going to go for a walk, and moved around her mother and walked out of the compound and made her way to the common streets of Konoha. Hatoi looked at the retreating form of her daughter and had a few tears building in her eyes. Oh, Hinata-chan. Flashback end. After Hinata had told Nar what happened, Nar made a decision. I hope they enjoyed their prank-free days because I'm going to make their last prank month seem like it was a party. Now both the Dam Council and the Hyugas will feel my wrath. Hyuga compounded Hiyashi's office. Hiyashi was sitting at his office table going through his compound finances before he stood up straight, knocking away all of the paperwork, and he felt a chill run up his spine as well as a familiar sense of dread. Oh no, I have to warn the others. And he went out to meet with the Hyuga elders, but he was cautious, and as he got out of his office, he pressed himself against the wall and shimmied his way slowly to the Hyuga elders' room. Back with Naruto and Hinata. After Nar made his choice to prank the Hyugas again, he turned to Hinata, who was sitting on the grass and had a few tears coming from her eyes. He hated to see her like this, and his protective instincts told him he needed to comfort her. And he got on his knees in front of her and gently placed his hand on her cheek and wiped a few of her tears away. Hinata jumped a bit when she felt Naruto's hands, which were soft, and she felt him gently wipe away some of her tears. Blushing hard, she looked up to see Nar looking at her, and she got lost in his azure blue eyes. Nar stopped wiping away the tears and smiled at her. Hinata, you are not a disappointment and you shouldn't let what your Tusan tell you that. If you lose a spar, then you just need to get stronger so you can do better next time. Besides, Tusans are bakas who don't know anything. Dad Biao, he said as he got back on his feet and brought up a fist to show he was serious. Nar for some reason heard growling in his head and felt like he would regret saying that last part. Hinata felt better seeing the enthusiasm from the blonde, got back on her feet, and started to poke her fingers together and looked to the ground as her blush got darker as she stuttered. Arigato NNN Narutkin. Nar grinned wide seeing Hinata back to normal, even if her normal was weird to him. You're welcome, Hinata-chan. Anyway, if you want to get better, we should start training so you can win next time. So, let's get started, he said as he started to walk to the center of the grass field. Hinata lifted her head, stared at Naruto's back, and slowly placed her hand on her cheek. The cheek that Nar had placed his hand to wipe away her tears. Narakan. She was about to faint from her thoughts on Naruto's gentle gesture, but was stopped when she heard Naro call her over. Hey, Hinata-chan, come on, let's get started. Hinata shook her head and started to run to catch up with her new partner, training partner. IIMM meant training partner. And before she made it to Naruto, she fainted. 1 hour later in the council room, the council had been arguing again about Naruto, but this time they were complaining about how Naruto beat their precious Uchiha. He should be punished for what he has done to Uchiha-sama. This is a clear sign that the brat is trying to go against us. We should restrain him from improving. The Hokage just sat there looking at the civilian council as they kept going. He was happy when they stopped and looked at him for an answer. He turned to see that the Shinobi Council and the elders were also looking at him, and in a slow motion he pulled out some earplugs that he received in the morning from Naruto, which caused everyone to face. Danzo was the only one that didn't show a clear reaction, but there was a slight twitch of his only visible eye. Hokage-sama, you should pay attention to these matters. If you do things like this, it could show you have no concern for village matters. He said while on the inside, he felt like this might help get him out of the Hokage seat. Hai just rolled his eyes. He was tired of listening to the civilians complaining about Nar. He was glad that Nar had started pranking the civilian council, and he chose not to say anything about it because he also enjoyed watching them. If all they say is about Nar, then I am not interested. He turned to the civilians. All you people ever do is come in here with your mundane problems and complaints about Naruto and asking for him to be punished when he has done nothing wrong. But he has injured Uchiha-sama. Hai just shook his head. I hate this job. Shikaku looked at the one that said it and spoke. From what I heard, this was during a spar between the two, which means that injuries obtained were meant to happen. Uchiha-sama should never be hurt. Sun couldn't believe these people. They want to give everything to the Uchiha brat, but they don't want him to get hurt. How do they think any of we shinobi get stronger? Maybe we should let them defend the village instead of us. See how good of a job they do. Chu crossed his arms and shook his head. A shame. They favor when there are other promising shinobi. The Uzumaki kid, from what Choji told me, has skill. Doden is his ramen rival. Maybe I should challenge him to see how far he can eat. Shikaku Yan already tired from this meeting troublesome. Shibi found this illogical. Focusing on one is illogical since one shinobi cannot make a village. It is merely one small piece. Enenoi sat there with similar thought to the others but also had her daughter's behavior on his mind. I wish this meeting would end soon since it's the same thing and I want to talk to Norika-chan about Ino's behavior. Maybe I can talk to Naruto too since I haven't seen him around the shop recently. Hiyashi was sitting there impassively not caring about either the Uchiha or the Uzumaki. I knew that this meeting had no real purpose and the only reason he allowed the meeting is because it might have been important. I should make it a rule that if the meeting has to do with Naruto doing something and should be punished for something so trivial, the meeting will not be approved and will not be discussed. Clearing his throat he chose to end it. The injuries that Sasuke received were during training. Then Naruto will not be punished for it. And since this is all you civilians are going to talk about, this meeting is over. The civilians started to complain about this, but when the Hokage released his killing intent on them, they quickly became silent. The civilian council and elders are dismissed. I would like the shinobi council to wait a moment before they leave, he said while hiding his smile behind his hands. The shinobi council were confused on what the Hokage wanted to speak about, but sat there as they saw the civilians and elders leave. As the group left and began to walk down the hall, they didn't notice several trip wires in their path until someone tripped it. And from the ceiling came a large bucket of tar and feathers hitting a few. From the walls came pies slapping them in the face. And down the hall came paintballs that once hit them found that they were filled with colorful and powerful glue that got them stuck to the floor and walls. Danzo wasn't hit as much, but found that he was glued almost completely to the wall. Damn that boy. When I get my hands on him, I will put him through hell so he knows who his master is. Most of the shinobi council moved their heads out of the council room to see what happened. Few of them laughed and all looked back to see that Hiyashi didn't move, but looked nervous and the Hokage with a smile on his face with Naruto. After his training with Hinata, Naruto was exhausted. His training with Hinata was helpful to the both of them. For Hinata, he gave her several ideas to improve on some of her clan jutsu. Ideas that she never would have thought about. And for Naruto, he had improved his reaction time and reflexes after he had convinced her not to hold back. Now he was on his way to Ikyaku Ramen to get some energy back and get to his food of the gods. Does he actually call it this in the manga or anime and to see a Yame Nan and Tuki Jizen since he hasn't seen them since he told her his secret? As he made it to the stand, he noticed that it was empty, apart from Ayame, who had her back turned working on a pot of ramen. He made his way to his usual stool seat and called out, "Hey, Yame Enchin." Ayame turned around to see Naro and smiled. Naroke_, it's good to see you again. Where have you been? Nar chuckled sheepishly as he rubbed the back of his head. I've been busy with missions and training. Anyway, can I get my usual chicken ramen? Ayame nodded and began to make his usual order of 23 bowls of ramen. After Naruto had eaten 10 bowls, he noticed that Ayame was the one doing all the cooking and hasn't seen Tuki yet. Hey Yame Nika, where's Tuki Jizen? I haven't seen him yet. Are you working alone right now? Ayame nodded her head as she put another bowl on the counter in front of Nar. Yatu-san had to go out and get some supplies for the shop, so he left me to run the stand while he is gone. As Naruto started on the bowl, she put down another thought entered Ayame's mind. Hey, Naruto-kun. Nar stopped slurping to look at Ayame. Can you show me what you look like as a fox? Whatever remained in his mouth found a quick exit as he spat out what he had and looked at her in fear. He knew she didn't hate him because of Rama, but he was still afraid of being rejected by one of the few people he cares about. Ayame Enchin. You Ayame saw the fear in Naruto's eyes and walked around the counter and hugged him as he trembled a bit. Naruto-kun, it's okay. I won't change my mind about you. No matter what you look like, you will still be Naruto-kun. Ayame was curious about what Naruto looked like in his fox form. But there was another reason she asked. She wanted Naruto to know that he had people that cared about him no matter what. And she felt he needed that since he had been depressed for a while. Nar was still trembling at the thought of showing his true form, but he began to relax a bit when he felt her rubbing his whiskers and calmed down. He was thinking about how a Yame Enchen might react, but what she said about not caring what he looks like gave him a ray of hope he was willing to reach for. So, he nodded his head and got up from the stool he was sitting at and looked up at Ayame to nod his head and gave a soft reply. Okay, Ayame Enchen. And with that, they both walked to the back of the stand where only Ayame and Tuki are allowed since it's where they keep their supplies. After they both made it to the back, Ayame sat on her knees, looking up at Naruto, who was shuffling his feet, and gave him a reassuring smile. Nar stood there for a few seconds, swallowing hard. He decided to do it quick, and in a poof of smoke, he turned into his fox form, which now put him at eye level with Ayame. He moved his muzzle downward, his tails drooped down, and kept glancing at Ayame. Ayame looked over Naruto's body, and based on the stories she heard about the Kobe, she couldn't see what there was to fear since to her, Naruto right now looked like he could barely harm anything. Naruto-kun, come here, please, she said as she made a gesture to come closer. Nar heard this and slowly walked closer until he was only a few feet away. He kept his head hung low until he felt a hand gently pet his head. He lifted his head to look in her eyes, and much to his relief, he didn't see any fear. And now that he calmed down, he realized that he didn't feel any negative emotions coming from her. See Nar, I'm not afraid of you. Nar lifted his head and tails as they started to wag back and forth as he felt happy that Ayame didn't had or fear him. He leapt onto her so his head was on her lap and wrapped his paws around her waist, giving a few happy yips. She doesn't hate me. She's not afraid of me. He began to nuzzle her stomach as she began to pet him, causing him to purr, but he didn't care. He was happy. Tuki had returned from getting his supplies and went to put them in the back. But when he opened the door, he saw his daughter petting a fox. It took him a minute till he remembered Nar telling them about his fox form and realized that this must be Nar. The four tails and color pattern helped him, too. He just stood there and smiled at the scene of Ayame on her knees petting Naruto and Nar sleeping on her lap as his tails wagged a bit and purring. The streets of Konoha were filled with the normal events. People shopping for groceries, store owners giving their greetings, kids playing, and their parents watching their kids to make sure that the kids aren't hurt. This was disturbed by a brown blur being chased by a pink blur and a black-blue blur. The blurs lost their target and split up to find it. Equals cotton candy here. I have lost the target. Ducky, do you have eyes on the target? Equals come on Ducky. He know you have to respond to communications I don't have eyes on the target. Cotton candy. Lazy pervert. Why the hell did he get to choose the names for this? It's because he won the card game. Lazy pervert spoke through the radio. But he wins every time. Next time I get to choose the names. Ducky responded. Speaking of which, where is Hunter? Cotton candy asked. Not sure. Hunter, do you copy? Hunter this is Hunter. I'm in pursuit of the target. Leading him to a trap. Hunter, where are you? Target is dangerous and we need to engage as a team. Lazy pervert commands. Hunter got him. Dad bo Sai give us your location so we can verify target 30 minutes later at the Hokage office. Oh, Tora, you had me worried sick. Mama is so glad that you have returned. Spoke Madam Shi, a corpulent woman with dark brown hair that she kept in 3 separate hair puffs. She was wearing pink lipstick, pink nail polish, and purple eyeshadow, as well as random colored rings on each finger. Kakashi, Sakura, Sasaki, and Naruto stood behind the scene of the woman who was squeezing the life out of a brown cat with a red ribbon on its right ear. Each of them with some scratch marks on their skin, and their cloths had rips all over. Each of them had their own thoughts about the scene in front of them. Sasaki, who had a bandage on his right cheek and one eye closed due to a 3-clawed scratch over his left eye, scowled at the cat, hoping it would catch fire. That thing needs to burn. Sakura was holding her left arm and winced every time she rubbed one of the many scratches she had on her arms. If I ever get a pet, I'm getting a quiet bird. Kakashi had his only visible eye covered with a bandage so he couldn't see anything around him, which pissed him off since he couldn't read. Sounds like the cat is being suffocated. Good. Naruto didn't have any visible injuries due to his healing ability, but he was missing his sash and his clothes were ripped so much that he knew that he wouldn't be able to repair it. I hate that cat so much I wouldn't even eat it. I should go hunting again later. Madam Shimi had given her thanks to the Genin team and the Hokage as she left with the wiggling cat that looked like it was reaching out for help. Once she was gone, the Hokage looked at the team and had to stifle a chuckle since this is a recurring mission and every Genin hates it. Well done Team 7 for completing the Demon Cat to Miss mission and in record time if I might add. Seeing that none of them were happy about what he said, he continued. Well, you can go on to do another mission, he said as he pulled out several mission scrolls. Well, now let's see. There is gardening for Katami-san or painting a set of rooms for Tu-san. Sasaki was furious at hearing that all the missions that were given to him were nothing but chores. No, no more of these chores. I should be getting real missions, not these useless tasks. Uruka, who had been standing on the side and going through several mission scrolls, stopped and looked angry at the Uchiha. Sasaki-kun, you should respect the Hokage. He is the ones that offers the missions, and it is not up to you on what mission you get. It is up to your sensei on what mission you get. Sasaki looked over to Kakashi, but the sensei didn't move and just stood there. It took Sasaki a second till he realized that his sensei at the moment couldn't see. Kakashi-sensei, we should be getting better missions, not these chores. Kakashi turned his head to Sasaki and sighed at this. Well, I think they will do fine if they receive a C-rank mission. Uruka was stunned by this. What makes you think they are ready for this? The Hokage was also curious about this since he wasn't expecting one of the recent graduating teams to receive a C-rank mission at this time. He was expecting it to take a few more weeks until one of them got one. Kakashi took a breath and began. They have completed the required number of D-rank missions in order to take a C rank and they would have gotten one a little sooner if it weren't for a few misplacement we had. He said as he put his hand on his back hip pouch where he kept his precious book. This time it was Ika violence. Nar was biting his lower lip and holding his breath trying not to laugh when he remembered the pranks he did against his sensei. The Hokage leaned back in his chair and thought about what Kakashi said. It was true that they finished the needed missions and it was a C rank mission. So all they would deal with are bandits. It was something they could handle. So he made his choice. Looking at Uruka, he spoke. Uruka-san, we will be allowing them to take a C-rank mission. We will give them the missions we received 2 days ago. Uruka was hesitant, but he nodded his head. Very well, Hokage-sama. Would you like me to go retrieve the client? Yes, Uruka-san, please tell the client that his request has been accepted. Uruka nodded his head and walked out of the room to go get the client. Most of Team 7 were excited about getting a new mission, but Nar wasn't as excited. He was happy that his team were getting a better mission, but he didn't really have anything against the dank missions for the most part. I was kind of hoping for that gardening mission, even if the woman hates me. 20 minutes later, Team 7 were doing little things to pass the time as they waited for the client. Sasaki was brooding in the corner. Sakura was sitting against the wall close by. Naruto was laying on the floor, tossing a small red ball in the air and catching it. And Kakashi, who removed his bandage, was reading his book. The Hokage was smoking his pipe with a scentless tobacco since last time he used his normal tobacco. Naruto had pranked him for 3 days. He really wanted his normal set, but he could handle it for now. Nar kept tossing the ball until an odor hit his nose, causing him to move both his hands to his nose and letting the ball hit the floor. Arg. Damn it. He started to roll around the floor, talking about a strong smell that was burning his nose. Kakashi and Sakura went to check on their teammate, but his rolling was making it hard to really tell if he was okay. After 4 minutes, thankfully, he was able to get back on his feet and removed his hands. But he had tears coming out of his eyes like he had just fell into a pile of onions. The smell is getting stronger. Ah. After a minute, a knock on the door was heard and with a short enter. The door was opened to show Uruka with a gray-haired spectacled man with a large beard and dark eyes. He wore a sleeveless versus neck shirt with an obi pants and a pair of sandals and a towel around his neck. In his hand was a sake bottle and his face had a blush on it. Obviously from being drunk. The man looked at the group and his face grew angry and looked to the Hogue. This is the team that you got for me. You said I would be getting Shinobi, not a group for me to babysit. The man looked over the team and gave his opinion on each. The dark-haired one looks like he would abandon me if he wanted. The pink one looks like she belongs in a store as a clerk. Apologies if I offend. And he paused as he looked to Nar who still had some tears flowing down his face. What's with the short blonde crybaby? Someone take his bottle. Even if Naruto's nose was still burning, what the man said pissed him off and lunged at the man, but was stopped by Kakashi grabbing the back of his jacket and lifting him in the air. Ma Naruto-kun, please don't kill the client before we even take the mission. And please, sir, madam is prepared to protect you from anything that might come after you. The man looked at the Oneide shinobi. You better protect me with your life and then some. My name is Suna, the great bridge builder, and I am expecting you to get me home safely, he said in a grandstanding manner. Kakashi was about to answer when he heard a noise *RIIIIPP, but he didn't know where it came from until he realized that Nar seemed to lose a lot of weight. Turning his head to the hand that held Nar, he saw that the jacket that he grabbed ripped entirely, and all that was in his hand was a piece of orange cloth. Looking down, he saw that Naruto was on his hands and knees and was slowly turning his head towards Kakashi. The look in Naruto's eyes were promising the Oneide sensei suffering and no way to escape it. Wanting to get out of the situation, he quickly spoke. Well, everyone, we will meet at the North Gate tomorrow at 8. Make sure to pack for a long mission. Yan. And with that, he poofed away. Nar got up from the ground and removed the remainder of the jacket, which were just the sleeves and some of the inner pockets, leaving his torso with just the Amboost-style shirt. Think a tight black sleeveless turtleneck shirt. Week of pranks. 7 days of humiliation. I might take his wallet, too, so I can get a replacement. I can't go to Tenten's shop, though. I know she is furious at me from the Hyuga thing. The Hokage cleared his throat to get the remaining people's attention. Well, everyone, I believe we all know when you must be at the gate, so you are all dismissed, except for Naruto and Iruka. I wish to speak with you too. After everyone had left, leaving Naruto and Iruka with him. Okay, Naruto-kun, this mission will be out of the village, and I want to know if you are going to be okay out there. Naruto stood in front of Iruka and the Hokage and thought about what was asked of him. I think I should be okay, Hokage. Gigi, I can handle anything out there, Dato. Iruka was worried about the boy, but the enthusiasm that he was watching the boy give calmed down a bit. Naruto-kun, are you sure you will be okay? Nar nodded with a big grin on his face until he thought of something. Oh, Hokage Gigi, do you have any more of those privacy tags? Just in case, you know. The Hokage and Iruka immediately knew what they were for. No. Were screamed by both, causing Naruto to cover his ears. They waited until Nar lowered his hands before they continued. You are not to do that again. You know what you went through the first time. Why would you do it again? Nar dipped his head down a bit and spoke. I don't want to. I just want it just in case I have to. And there is no other way. He lifted his head to look the Hokage in the eyes. He stared back at the boy, but sighed in defeat as he pulled out 2 tags and held them out Naruto to take. As Naruto grabbed them, he held them firm with a warning. Naruto_, please don't use these unless absolutely necessary. Is that understood? Nar nodded his head with a serious look. Hi, Hokage Gigi. Nar took them when the Hokage let them go and started making his way out, but stopped when he heard Iruka speak. Be careful out there, Naruto. Nar looked back and smiled before giving a nod. That night, Naruto's mindscape. Naruto sat in front of Kurama, looking into his 2-chan's eyes, trying to win him over. No, but 2-chan, no, I will not allow you to go through that again. Rama 2-chan, it's only in case we need to, but I want you to help me if I have to, please. Kurama sat there looking at his kid and knew that at the moment he wouldn't be able to get through his kid's thick skull. Sometimes I hate how stubborn he can be. Fine, kid, but I will only allow it when necessary. Nar grumbled at this, knowing that it was the best he was going to get. So, he agreed to it. After they came to this agreement, Naruto hopped up to Rama's head and laid down before he started to talk about how his day went, and Rama giving his teasing comments about him losing to a cat and enjoying his time with his kid. Next morning, 10:30, Naruto, Sasaki, Sakura, and Suna were at the North Gate waiting for their sensei, but they weren't waiting long since they had arrived 10 minutes ago, and that confused Suna. So, why did we arrive hours after that silver-haired guy told us to? Suna asked, wondering about why he was told by the blonde that there was a change in the time they need to arrive at the gate. Nar looked over at his team before he looked back at Suna. Our sensei has a habit of being up to 3 hours late, and we don't want to stand here waiting for him, so I sent a clone to tell you the time change. Suna was a little confused about the clone bid, but accepted it and started digging through his backpack, pulling out a sake bottle, much to Naruto's displeasure. Nar hated the smell of alcohol ever since he walked past a bar with a bunch of drinkers in it back when he was a kid. Hey, can you please not drink that or even open it? Tuna ignored what Naruto said and just opened the bottle and chugged it down, making Naruto hold his nose closed. After 26 minutes of waiting and Kakashi finally showed up with his usual yo before Sakura could say anything, Naruto beat her to the punch. You're late, Kakashi-sensei, which is it this time? An old man black cat lost your favorite book again. Kakashi immediately placed his hand in his pouch and pulled it out and opened it to see if it was still his precious few still there. Anyway, it was the black cat. Naruto, Sasaki, and Sakura all sighed and shake their heads since they were so tired of these excuses. Sasaki wanted to get the mission started, so he started walking out of the gate, being followed by Naruto and Sakura. Kakashi and Suna stood there for a second before the both shrugged and walk off as well to catch up. That night, after traveling the whole day without any problems, the team had set up camp with Naruto and Kakashi setting up the tent, Sasaki getting a fire set, and Sakura getting the pot ready for them to use for cooking. During the traveling, the team was bored. Well, mostly Sasaki and Sakura. Kakashi spent the time reading his precious Ica Violence, and Naruto midway started to read the book Anko gave him since he only didn't have anything else to do, and Kurama told him to take it last night. Kakashi had set up the tent meant for the team, but was confused when he saw Naruto putting up his own tent. Naruto-kun, you do know that we have a team tent for us to use, right? Why are you setting up another one? Nar finished setting it up and turned to Kakashi. It's for me. I kind of like my own single tent since I used it a lot in the forest of Konoha. For obvious reasons, Nar didn't want his team to see his fox form as he slept. After Naruto had placed his pack in his tent, he went to the fire and sat in front of it and started reading Anko's gift. Sakura had finished getting the cooking set ready when a question popped into her head. Hey Kakashi-sensei, how long will it take for us to get to Wave Country? Kakashi looked up in thought, thinking on the question, well, at the pace we are going, a day more or less. Tuzuna picked up from there after taking a swig of alcohol. There is a boat we have to take to get to my home. I have a friend who will give us a ride. Sakura nodded her head, thankful that the trip wouldn't take so long. Well, we should get something to eat since none of us have eaten all day. The team were able to eat some soup that Sakura made with the help of Nar, who had some spices he uses when he is in the forest on his own. After everyone had eaten, they decided who would be on the first lookout and the order they would go with. Nar decided to be the first watch to avoid someone walking in on him as he slept. Next would be Sakura, then Sasaki, and last Kakashi, each with a 2-hour shift. 300 p.m. Next day, the group had been making good time getting to Wave as they were now close to where they had to meet Suna's friend. Team 7 were walking down the path with Sakura, asking Suna if Wave had any shinobi in it, and Kakashi giving her an explanation about how some villages don't have shinobi of their own. Sasaki just kept his eyes on the road, thinking on murdering his brother. Not much else on his mind. Kakashi still reading his book. Wonder how many times he has read it. And Naruto was holding his nose trying not to gag from the alcohol smell coming from Suna, who kept drinking. As they kept walking, Naruto suddenly felt some ill intent coming from down the road and looked towards it. On the ground, a small puddle was seen in their way, and it confused Nar since it hadn't rained in a while. Wanting to get confirmation, he removed his hands from his nose to sniff the air to see if he could smell any moisture. But he regretted the action and immediately put his hands back since all he could smell was the sake come from Suna. As they walked past the puddle, Kakashi took notice of it and decided to see where this event would lead to. So, he acted oblivious to the two rising shinobi coming from the very puddle they passed. Out of the puddle came two shinobi, each wearing kiri he ate. The first one was Go. Go had shoulder-length wild dark brown hair and dark eyes. He wore a rebreather that covers the lower half of his face and a large clawed gauntlet on his right arm which had a chain coming out of it that had the other end attached to his partner's own gauntlet. He wore a camouflage suit with bandages around his waist, dark called knee-length sandals, and a ragged black cape. His kiri hit had a single horn on it. His partner was Mizu. Mizu wore the same outfit apart from the cape he wore, which was gray in color, and his chained gauntlet was on his left arm instead of the right and with a chain connecting to his partner's gauntlet. Both rushed to the group without any of them noticing, and when they were close enough they wrapped Kakashi in the spiked chains. Everyone turned to see that Kakashi was in trouble, but before any of them could act, the two Kiri shinobi pulled on their chains and sliced Kakashi to pieces. Everyone was shocked to see Kakashi cut to ribbons so quickly and with no chance to counter. Mizu chuckled at the shocked look from everyone. He looks to the fallen sensei. One down. As his partner Go looks to the group, one to go, and they charged towards the group. Team 7 was still in shock and Tuna fell on his and slowly crawled backwards seeing the two Kiri shinobi heading their way. Sakura was the first to react as she screamed. "Aah!" The scream knocked Naruto back into reality and looks to see the coming shinobi, and on instinct he tossed some shuriken at Mizu which caused him to slow down a bit to dodge them, which Naruto used to get close to him. Mizu was shocked to see the blonde to move fast enough to reach him. But seeing the blonde swinging his fist at him, Mizu brought up his gauntlet up to block the fist. Go saw that Mizu started to fight and went to help him since he figured that the faster they got rid of the kids, the faster they could get to their intended target. But if they got a chance, they would kill the bridge builder. Rushing to Mizu, he shifted his right arm to move the chain to create a loop that hovers over the blonde so he could pull it down on the kid to finish him off. Nar saw that the chain had looped above his head and was dropping to wrap around him, moving back to try and avoid the chain. He was hit by the claw of the gauntlet, leaving 2 slashes going diagonally across his face, and the chain dropped even faster around Naruto and in a quick motion tied him up, and the blades started to hurt him as he tried to focus on not releasing the hench. Mizu and Go smirked under their masks and looked towards the group before Go speaks. Give us the old man and we will give you your friend back. They saw that the pink-haired girl was shaking, doing her best to stay on her feet, but they couldn't see the boy with black hair. Where did the other one go? He was answered when a fireball made its way towards all 3 of them. Both were about to unloop the chain from the blonde to get away, but found that said blonde grabbed the chain, keeping it from loosening, and both looked back at the fireball as it hit them directly and caused an explosion. Sasaki dropped from the trees and walked up to the still smoldering crater and smirked, knowing he took out 2 rogue shinobi on his own underscore. Sakura was shocked to see the fireball hit not only the 2 Kiri shinobi but Nar as well. Nar, stop yelling, Kami. And I thought you stopped doing that, was heard behind her, and she turned to see Nar standing there with his hands over his ears. Sakura and Suna were shocked to see the blonde standing in between them and not burnt to a crisp. Suna couldn't figure out how it happened. How the hell are you alive, kid? Nar removed his hands from his ears and looked back at Tuzuna. At the very last second, I used the Kawirami to switch places with something, and thankfully, it worked. Sakura looked back at the crater, then back at Naruto. What did you switch with? Nar shrugged his shoulders. Don't know. I just switched with the thing that was on the ground. Naruto looked down to see that he was stepping in a small puddle. Taking a sniff, he covered his nose and his eyes started to water. I think I switched with Suna-san's sake bottle. Sasaki made his way back to the group with the smirk still on his face just in time to hear Tuzuna cry in despair. What the hell's wrong with him? He asked just to see his teammates shake their head. Kakashi chose now to pop out from the bushes with an eye smile. Looks like my cute Gen and team have made it through their first shinobi battle. He wiped away an imaginary tear. I'm so proud. Everyone looked at Kakashi in shock, not believing that he was alive. Sakura voiced their question. Kakashi-sensei, how are you? Kakashi just pointed to where his body should have been, and all they saw were chunks of wood, and they made the connection of him using the Kavarami to replace himself with a log. Kakashi went to the crater to see that the 2 Kiri shinobi both had burns on most of their body but were alive. So, he took out some ninja wire, pulled them out, removed their weapons, and tied them to a tree. Well done, team. You took out the demon brothers of the mist. Kakashi then turned his attention to Suna. Now then, tell me why you had shinobi after you when all we were expected to handle were bandits, he said in his normal tone, but the threat was subtly there, which caused Suna to gulp nervously. 20 minutes later, Suna spent this time telling the team about God and his hold on Wave, draining all the resources they had in oppressing the people. He explained how the bridge they were building would be able to bring in new resource and trade routes that would bring Wave back on its feet, which would loosen the grip God has over them. Nar was listening to all this and felt like he needed to help these people. He knew what it was like to be oppressed. He knew what it was like to have no hope of a better tomorrow, and he hated to think that it was happening to others. He had made his decision before Tuzuna even finished his story. Kakashi listened impassively since he had seen places like this before. He shook his head, knowing that this mission was no longer a C-rank mission. By all rights, we should abandon this mission since this is at least a B rank and you have not paid for one. Suna wanted to beg for their help since they were close to his home anyway, but he was stopped when Naruto spoke up. Kakashi-sensei, we should continue the mission. Kakashi looked to Nar wondering why he would want to continue a mission that might be beyond their abilities. Dabi, why should we go along with this? It's their problem, not ours. Sakura looked to Sasaki after hearing the problems Wave were dealing with. She wanted to see if there was something they could do to help. Even if she felt like she couldn't help out much. Hearing Sasaki act like it was something minor and they shouldn't do anything confused her. He acted like it was below him, and the way he attacked the demon brothers with Naruto in the way concerned her. Looking down and thinking about what to do, she glanced at Nar, who had a determined look on his face regardless of him sweating, and seeing that Nar was ready to help. She decided that she should also help. Even if Sasaki didn't want to. Sasaki, I also think that we help them. Kakashi looking at Sakura raised an eyebrow in mild shock. Interesting. I would have thought that she would agree with Sasaki, not Naruto-kun. Wonder why she wants to keep going. Sasaki scowled at Sakura, making her flinch, and she felt small under his glare. Why should I listen to you? This guy thought he could fool us, and he expects us to just say, okay, we will go. No, he should learn not to lie to his betters. Nar wanted to punch Sasuke with everything he had. Council be damned, but he needed the Uchiha to continue the mission. So, he decided to play on his ego. Hey, if we keep going, we might run into more rogue shinobi. Nar could just feel his ego rising and knew that the only one left to convince was Kakashi. Kakashi could see that everyone on his team have chosen to keep the mission going, and he was somewhat glad they all agreed to help out, even if one of them is doing it for more selfish reasons. So, with a sigh of defeat, he made his choice. Alright, I suppose since everyone is so set on going, we keep going. But I want you all to be on high alert. We don't know if those two are the last ones we will see. He then turned to Suna, who started to have a hopeful look in his eyes. You should be happy we are still going with the mission. Suna bowed down thanking them for helping him even though he lied about the mission. As Kakashi prepared to send a messenger dog for a pickup on the rogue shinobi, Naruto decided to sit down as his breathing was becoming heavier and his head and eye were in pain, but he didn't know why. It was becoming harder to keep his hands up with how his head was burning. Granted, it wasn't the worst pain he has felt, but it still hurt. Sakura noticed Naruto's condition and walked up to him to see what was wrong. Naruto, are you okay? Naruto didn't respond and kept his eyes closed and his breathing got harder. She got worried and knelt down, moved his height and placed her hand on his forehead, but pulled it back when it was literally burning. Kakashi, something is wrong with Nar. Kakashi hearing this looked over to Nar and saw his condition making him rush to his student and looking him over. Nar was in a state of half-consciousness and the conscious part was instinctively keeping up the henge while the rest of him had entered the mindscape. Naruto's mindscape. Nar laid on the grassy field where he usually enters as Kurama stood over him and with his head tilted up and a look of concentration. Nar opened his eyes and looked up while his eyelids drooped halfway and tiredly asked, Rauchu-chan, what are you doing? Kurama, not looking at his kit, responded, you've been poisoned, kit. I am trying to expuna it, but the wound is sealed and I can only keep it in one spot on the side of your face. Looking down to his kit, he continued. You need to wake up, kid, and give me an opening to let the poison out. Try and cut in the same spot. It would let it out faster, and I don't want to flow the poison through much of your body just to get it out. Even though Naruto felt weak, he heard everything, and the idea of him being poisoned gave him a bit more energy, and as quick as he could, left the mindscape. Real world. Sakura and Kakashi were trying to figure out what had happened to Nar while Sasuke stayed back with Suna. Naruto's eyes shot open, shocking both Sakura and Kakashi. He slowly grabbed a kunai from his pouch and brought it to his face. And before Kakashi or Sakura could stop him, he quickly swiped his cheek and letting it bleed. Kakashi was shocked at the action and Sakura was stunned silent. Quickly, Kakashi pulled out a bandage from one of his jacket pockets and was about to place it over the wound, but Nar grabbed his wrist and shook his head. Nar, why did you do that to yourself? We need to seal the wound quickly. Nar just shook his head again and said, poison. Nodding in understand, Kakashi stopped what he was doing, much to Sakura's confusion, which Kakashi decided to clear up. It seems that the gauntlet that cut him was coated in poison. He is letting the poison bleed out of his system. Pretty clever if you ask me. Sakura was still concerned about her teammate. Is there any way we can help him? Kakashi shook his head as he saw that Nar was looking a lot better. No, I'm not a medical shinobi, so all I have are basic field training. All we can do is let Naruto be as his body gets rid of the poison. Sakura didn't like the idea of not being useful at all. During the fight, she didn't do anything. And now that the fight was over, she realized that she couldn't help and support either. She felt worthless. After a few minutes, Naruto was back on his feet and ready to get moving. And even when Kakashi and Sakura said they should rest a bit more, Naruto waved it off and started marching down the road. 2 hours later after the fight, it didn't take long until they made it to the waterbank where they would meet Tazuna's friend that would take them across the water into wave country. The boat ride was a short, peaceful trip. The only thing that happened was natto fishing with a kunai and ninja wire, much to the shock of Sakura and annoyance of Sasaki. Once they made it to the other side, Naruto gave most of the fish to Suna's friend, and he kept one so he could eat later. Now, the group was walking down a path surrounded by trees and bushes, but their vision was blocked by mist that put Nar on edge because not only did the mist block his sight a bit, the mist felt odd. After a bit more walking, Nar felt ill intent somewhere ahead of him, and on instinct, he threw a canny where he felt it. He ran to where his canny landed behind a bush. Moving the bush aside, he found a bunny that looked like it was traumatized for life. Sakura was startled from Naruto throwing the kunai and Sasaki looked ready for a fight. But when they saw him pull out a white bunny by the ears, they both deflated. Sakura didn't need any more years removed from her life from fright. Naruto baka, don't do that. Sakura may have stopped calling him that, but she still called him that every now and then out of reflex. Sasaki was mad at the blonde getting him worked up for nothing. Dobi Kakashi was analyzing the bunny, feeling that something was off. That bunny is white. It shouldn't be that color, not at this time of year. Nar, for his part, thought of eating the bunny in a stew since he has had them before when hunting. But his thoughts changed when he felt ill intent aimed at his group. Get down! Yelled Kakashi, making Sasaki drop down as Naruto pushed both Sakura and Suna to the ground as a massive sword spun in the air over their heads. The sword kept flying in the air until it arched up and stuck itself high in a tree. As the group were getting up from the ground, they heard someone speak in a growly voice, well, never thought this job would give me a fight like this. The voice forced everyone to look up to where the blade had stuck and saw a man standing on the hilt of the blade. Kakashi recognized the man from the bingo book. Zabuza Mamochi, Demon of the Mist, and one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist. Zabuza was a tall and noticeably muscular man with light grayish skin, short spiky black hair, dark brown eyes, and small eyebrows. He was wearing bandages like a mask over the bottom half of his face. He wore his hishiate sideways on his head. He was shirtless with his chest only covered by a belt to which he attached his kubikiri bojo, wearing baggy pants with a striped pattern and mimetic wrist warmers extending up to his elbows with matching leg warmers. Zabuza chuckled. Good to see that my reputation is still as good as ever. But you have a reputation just as good if not better. Copycat Kakashi, or would you prefer Kakashi of the Sharingan? When the genin heard this, only 2 of them responded. Sasaki looking over to Kakashi in shocked anger. Why is he called that? He isn't an Uchiha. So why is he called Kakashi of the Sharingan? Nar looked apprehensive when he heard the word sharing. He didn't know why, but he felt he should be wary of whatever it is. Kakashi knew he wouldn't be able to hold back on an enemy like this, so he put his hand on the part of his hit that covered his eye and lifted it to reveal his Sharingan eye. Sasuke scowled at his sensei. How did he get that? Nar shook a bit in fear of the eye. He knew he had never seen it before, but it felt oddly familiar. In his head, he heard growling. Be careful about that eye. I've felt it before. Nar was startled when he heard Kurama in his head since he has never spoke to him this way. Nar didn't get to think about it since Kakashi gave his command. Nar, Sasaki, Sakura, protect Suna, diamond formation. I will handle Zabuza. Complying with the order, all 3 of them got in formation with Naruto being in front of Suna, Sasaki being on the right and Sakura on the left. Zabuza chuckled darkly and dropping from his sword, he grabbed the handle and ripped it out of the tree. Look at that, kids pretending to be ninja. Tell me kiddies, have you seen blood before? After he said this, he released his ki against them. Each of them had different reactions to the ki. Sasake's breathing became heavy and began to sweat. Sakura's legs started to wobble and was on the verge of collapsing, and Naruto stood still with wide eyes and arms dropped to his side. Sasaki was bringing a kunai to his throat from the feeling he got from the ki. Make it stop. Make it stop. I can't handle this feeling. Make it stop. He thought as images of his death popped in his head. Sakura had tears falling down her face. I'm going to die. I shouldn't have become a kunoichi if this was what it was like. Why did I become one? Nar had no thoughts going through his head, just the feeling of the ki overwhelming him as the color of his eyes slowly faded. They all snapped out of their states when Kakashi spoke. Everyone, they all shook their heads and looked towards Kakashi. Don't worry, I promise to protect you all with my life. Trust me. Zabuza laughed at the declaration. Oh, you think that any of you will live to see the next day? Sorry to say, but you. He didn't get to finish his sentence as he felt a kunai pierce his back. You know you talk too much was heard behind Zabuza as the Kakashi in front of him disappeared in a poof of smoke. Zabuza's eyes widened a bit. A clone, huh? Not bad. He thought as he collapsed into a puddle of water. Kakashi was stunned seeing that Zabuza turned into water. Mizu Bunchin. He thought before he jumped to his left to avoid a vertical slash from Zabuza, who continued his assault, forcing Kakashi further away from his team. Sidestepping a diagonal slash, Kakashi grabbed the wrist, and with his free hand pulled back, threw a punch to Zabuza's face, but the fist was grabbed by Zabuza's free hand, and they both stared into the other's eyes. Zabuza smirked as they both fought to overpower the other. For a skilled shinobi like you sure made a rookie mistake. Kakashi was confused about what he said until he realized that he was too far away from his team and the client. No. Kakashi tried to think of a way to get out of the standoff, but if he let go and turned away, he would be cut in the back, and the position he was in wouldn't allow him to kick Zabuza hard enough away. Zabuza had no problem with how he was. He shifted his feet and pulled back the hand holding Kakashi's fist. Kakashi lost his balance and felt the hand holding Zabuza's wrist being pulled off and was suddenly thrown over Zabuza's shoulder. After Zabuza tossed Kakashi, he began to go through a long set of hand signs as fast as he could and unleashed his jutsu. Sweden swear you didn't know jutsu. Kakashi flipped in the air and landed in a sliding crouch. He lifted his head in time to see a water dragon charging at him. He was off balance and wouldn't be able to avoid the jutsu. Back with Team 7 and Suna. The team had their guard up, but kept their eyes on the fight in the distance, but the mist made it hard to clearly see. As they watched, they suddenly heard someone speak. Hidden mist jutsu, and then the mist grew much thicker, cutting off their vision entirely of the fight. Each pulling out a kunai, they got ready for anything as they kept shifting their eyes left and right. Nar couldn't smell anything since the air smelled of moisture and he could still smell the sake from Suna. After a few seconds, the hair on the back of his neck rose and he felt massive ill intent behind him. Quickly turning, he saw behind Suna Zabuza lifting his arm to swing at all of them and on reflex tossed his kani at the man, which hit the man since he was unable to block at such a close range. Sasaki and Sakura looked behind them just in time to see Zabuza turning into a puddle of water. Dabi, what happened? Don't know, TM. They all heard the fight from Kakashi and Zabuza, and each of them were hoping that Kakashi would be able to beat him. But their hopes were crushed when the herd water prison jutsu. The mist started to let up, and they could see Kakashi was trapped in a bubble of water with his head being the only thing that was free. Sakura was panicking at the sight. Kakashi-sensei. She wanted to help out, but couldn't think of anything. Zabuza knew he had one and in his good mood thought to spare the green genin since his job was only the bridge builder. Well, looks like we each have something the other wants. So, how about it, kids? Give me the old man. I give you your sensei and we all leave happy. How about it? Nar gritted his teeth, trying to think of anything they could do. Looking back at Tuzuna, he couldn't think of anything. He could see the fear in the man looking back at him and looked like he was afraid Naruto would give him up. Naruto felt like there was nothing they could do until a smell hit his nose and he came up with something. Looking to Sasaki, who looked like he hated the idea of losing, he gave his idea in a hushed tone. Hey TM, I have an idea and I need your help, he said, lowered himself and began unstrapping his sandals. Sasake's scowl grew as he looked at Nar. Why should I listen to you, Dabi? What kind of plan could you come up with anyway? Nar just finished undoing his sandals and got ready. Do you have a plan? If you do, I would like to hear it. Naruto said in a harsh whisper. Sasaki growled cause he didn't have anything, so he reluctantly listened to the plan. Zabuza couldn't hear any of the whisper they were doing, but felt amused at how they were coming up with a plan in the middle of the battle. While Kakashi began to yell at them, telling them to run, which was ignored by them. Looking back at the genin, he saw them start to make their move. Nar crossed his fingers to start his plan. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 5 clones popped up and 2 of them started running in opposite directions in a wide arc towards Zabuza while another 2 ran towards him. Shadow clones. Kid's got some skill if he has that under his belt. Zabuza made 2 Mizu Bunshin to defend him and take out the clones. Much to his shock, one of the ones heading directly toward him stopped halfway while the other fell on all fours and started moving much faster. But it was still slow enough for his clone to block the claw strike aimed at him. Looking at both sides, he saw that the one on his left stopped moving while the one on the right had jumped in the air, looking like he was aiming a fist at him. The second water clone jumped to intercept. Zabuza kept his eyes on the 2 that remained a distance while his clones dealt with each other. Suddenly, the 2 clones that stood a distance away started running towards each other. Zabuza didn't understand what they were doing, but when he heard one of the clones that remained by the pink-haired girl, an old man yell, "Now," he kept his head turned to them, he kept staring at them until he felt himself shift a bit. As he watched, he noticed that they were no longer there. What? Where did they go? He thought as he also noticed that the forest that was behind the 2 was now closer. Kaden. Goku no Jutsu. Turning his head to look forward, he noticed that the water ball prison that he had Kakashi in was replaced with a massive fireball heading in his direction. What the hell? And before he could jump out of the way, he was struck by it. Sasaki fell to the ground on his knees from where the fireball came from, trying to catch his breath. He lifted his head to look over where the clones were and saw that Zabuza's clones had collapsed, leaving puddles. After which he turned to Sakura's side of the field and saw that Kakashi was standing where one of Naruto's clones were. Nar fell on his back, smiling that his plan worked. Phew, it worked. Ha, how's that? We got both Kakashi-sensei back and hit Zabuza. I'm awesome, Dad. Bo. The plan Naruto came up with was to have 2 clones attack Zabuza to distract him while the other 2 stopped at a distance and then head to each other with one using the Kawarimi to switch with Sasaki and the other switching with Zabuza. The switch with Sasaki would be when he is on the final hand sign for his jutsu. Kakashi was surprised to see such a maneuver. It was unorthodox and had some flaws, but it was smart and tactical. Never would have thought about switching places with Bunchan. How did he come up with that? As Naruto and Sasaki got back on their feet and Naruto's clones dispelled, they made their way back to where Kakashi, Sakura, and Suna, but they stopped when they heard laughing coming from where the fireball hit. Zabuza was still standing with his sword in front of him, which he obviously used as a shield against the fireball. He lowered his sword to look at Kakashi and his team, and in a strained voice spoke, "Not bad, kid." He started to slowly limp out of the circle of fire. "You actually got me with that. I underestimated you, but now it's time I got." Whatever he was about to say was stopped when two sunbon needles hit him in the neck. Everyone was shocked to see a hunter nin drop down indirectly in front of them. "Thank you for your assistance in taking him down. I have been after him for weeks now, but was unable to defeat him." Kakashi eyed the hunter nin a bit, but was glad that the fight was over. Akiri hunter nina. Well, it was no problem. Based on how tough he was to beat, it makes sense you would wait until he was vulnerable. Nar looked confused on what was going on. So he turned to Sakura. "Hey Sakura, what's a hunter nin?" Sakura, although still shaken by the fight, looked towards Nar and answered, "Well, from what we learned, they are shinobi that are specifically hired to hunt down rogue shinobi and bring them back to claim the reward set on them." "Oh, hobby." As the hunter nin walked towards Zabuza, Kakashi looked towards his genin. "That was a risky move you did there, Nar." Nar shrunk his head into his jacket, feeling like he did something wrong, and he didn't like that eye that Kakashi had. For some reason, it felt familiar and not in a good way. Nar didn't even know about the eye before this, so why does he feel this way? He felt a little better when he lowered his hit to cover it up again. "Kakashi." Then I smiled, but it was also really clever and got me out of that sticky situation. "How did you come up with it?" Nar smiled at the praise and looked up at his sensei before his smile became a big grin. "I got the idea when I smelled Suna's sake still on him. It reminded me of when I switched with his bottle during the fight with the demon brothers." The hunter nin picked up Zabuza's body and turning to the group, he lifted his hand in a wave. "Thank you again." And then shined away. Kakashi gave a heavy sigh and slumped his shoulders as he looked at Suna. "How far away is your house?" Suna looked at the tired-looking shinobi and said, "Not that far." Kakashi nodded his head as he looked at his genin team. "Good. I'm leaving it to you guys to get us there because I'm about to." And with that, Kakashi fainted. Sakura rushed to Kakashi to see if he was okay only to see that he had fainted. "He's okay, but now what?" Naruto slumped his shoulders, knowing that they would have to drag their sensei to Suna's house. So with a groan, he made 3 clones. "I should take his book again for making me carry him and for my jacket." And with that, the team, Suna, and an unconscious Kakashi made their way to Suna's house. The group finally made it to Suna's house after 40 minutes of walking. Nar was now dragging Kakashi with his top half on the ground since the clones decided they didn't want to keep carrying him so dispelled themselves. So now Naruto dragged the man by the legs to their destination. Suna knocked on the door and waited for whoever was inside to open the door. After a few seconds, the door opened to show a young woman who became happy to see the old man. "Dad, you're back," she said as she hugged Suna. Suna chuckled at the young woman and hugged back. "Of course, I'm back and it's thanks to these shinobi here." Tuna turned to Team 7 and gave introductions. "This is my daughter Tsunami. Tsunami, these are the ones who took the request." Tsunami had long blue-colored hair. She was wearing a short-sleeved pink shirt with the end of the sleeves and the collar being red in color and a long blue skirt. Tsunami looked at the group and gave a thankful bow. "Thank you for taking on our request and seeing my father home." Naruto smiled and dropped Kakashi's left leg and waved it off like it was nothing. "Don't worry about it. It was nothing." Sakura stood behind him with Sasaki and smiled while Sasaki smirked. Tsunami then noticed the unconscious man on the ground and gasped, "Oh dear, is he alright?" Naruto looked behind him to see his sensei was still knocked out. "Oh, he's fine, but do you have somewhere we can put him?" Tsunami nodded. "Of course, please come in," she said as she allowed them in. And once she closed the door, she walked to a staircase and called up, "Irie, come down here, please. We have guests." After she called, a young boy came down from the stairs. "What is it, Mom?" And when he saw the others, his mood became sour. Tsunami looked to Team 7. "This is my son, Inari." And then looked at Inari. "Inari, these are the shinobi that your grandfather hired to protect him." Inari's face grew angry as he looked at Team 7. "You should leave and stay out of our business," he said as he ran back up the stairs. Tsunami sighed at what Inari said, but she understood why he was like this. "I'm sorry about him. He has been like this for a while, but he doesn't mean much by it." Looking at Naruto, she continued, anyway, we have 2 guest rooms that you can use up the stairs and the last 2 doors on the right. You can place him in one of them to rest. Nar gained a devilish smile as he looked up at Tsunami. Thank you, Tsunami-san. I will take him right now. And Naruto made his way to the stairs, still dragging Kakashi. Everyone watched Naruto take his steps up the stairs, but winced when they heard it. Thump, thump, thump. The sound of Kakashi's head hitting the steps. Tsunami would have asked if he needed help, but she saw the smile on the boy's face as well as what he was saying and realized that he was doing it on purpose. Nar had a different thought every time he heard a thump. Thump, oops, that's for ripping my jacket. Thump, oops, that's for always being late. Thump, oops, that's for being a pervert. Thump, oops, that's because of your creepy eye. Thump, oops, that's because I felt like it. Thump, oops, that's because I think it's funny. This kept going until he made it to the top. And Naruto dragged him into the room and created a bunch to help put Kakashi to bed. He then reached into one of Kakashi's pockets and pulled out his wallet before he took some money out of it. Payment for a replacement jacket and some ramen too. And with that, he left the room, missing the massive wealth that grew on Kakashi's head. That night, Naruto had chosen to sleep outside in a tent, but not without a lot of convincing since Tsunami was worried the boy would get a cold as she told him how he could sleep in the guest room with his teammate and sensei since there was room and she had some spare blankets, but he told her that he would be a sort of guard for the house. He convinced her and told her not to check up on him since he would be alright. Kakashi was another one to convince, but after telling his sensei that it would help out having one of them outside as a guard, Kakashi relented and allowed it. Once he set up his tent, he went inside and pulled out his sleeping bag and undid his henge to go into his mindscape. He also had a clone out to watch, not only for intruders, but to make sure no one went to see him. Naruto's mindscape. Naruto was rushing to where Rama would be, and he had an irritated look on his muzzle. Once he made it to Rama's tree, he sat there with his tails irritatingly hitting the ground behind him as he looked up at Rama as he came out. Kurama looked down and saw that his kid was mad at him and had an idea as to why. What's wrong, Kit? Nar huffed at the question and ranted. You know what's wrong, damn it. Why didn't you tell me you could talk to me when I'm awake? I thought the only time you and I could talk was when I slept. How long have you been able to do that? Kurama thought it was funny and cute to see his kid rant as he imagined what this would look like to others. A massive fox looking down at a tiny patterned fox. Hee I've been able to do this since the beginning. Nar pulled his long ears down and screamed, what? Why haven't you done this before then? Why only do it when Kakashi-sensei pulls out that weird eye of his? Nar then leapt to the top of Rama's head and started to beat on his head, but put no strength in the hits. Kurama just let his kid keep hitting his head as he spoke because I enjoy it when you come to me and talk about your day to me face to face. Nar slowly stopped his beating when he heard this and just laid down on the top of his head. Okay. But if I ask for some help or advice while I'm awake, will you talk to me, please? Kurama moved his eyes upward. Of course, if you ever need help, I will be here. Smiling, Nar put his head down. Thanks, Rama-chan. Next day, Team 7 were all gathered around Kakashi as he had woken up while Sakura was taking care of him. Kakashi was right now rubbing his head. Any of you know why my head hurts so much? I don't remember being hit in the head so hard. The team just shook their heads while in Naruto's mind he was laughing hard. Kakashi just tried to ignore the throbbing and looked to his genin. Well, thanks for getting me here, but there is something that you guys need to know. Everyone gave him their full attention. Zabuza is possibly still alive. The whole genin team started to panic since they didn't believe him to be. Kakashi lifted his hand to stop any questions they were about to shoot and looked to Sakura. Sakura-chan, can you tell me what a hunter nin does when they have subdued their target? Looking up and with a finger to her chin, she thought about what she read in a book. Hunter nin are shinobi that are hired by villages or nobles to hunt down ninja that have abandoned their home and are a threat to the village they come from. Hunter nin are to either capture their target alive if requested, but more likely to terminate the target and return the head and incinerating the body to avoid any possible secrets the body may possess. She recited as if reading from a book. It was then realization dawned on her. Kakashi nodded his head when he saw she figured it out. Yep, the hunter nin took the whole body and showing no signs of even considering finishing the job. And if I had to guess, I would say that they were in league with each other. Kakashi then looked at Nar. Could you track them by scent since you have a nose like an Inuzuka? Nar was a little taken back being asked this. He has never been asked to do this before. Well, I could, but I couldn't really smell them since the strongest scent was alcohol. He then looked ashamed for not doing it. Sorry. Kakashi eyes smiled at him. Mama Narokan. It's fine, but since we can't track them, we will have to keep guard until he comes to us. The look they all gave him told him they weren't expecting that. His job is to terminate Suna and he isn't the type to give up on a job. So we need to be ready for when he strikes. They remained silent until Sakura broke the silence. How will we do that? Kakashi-sensei. Kakashi smiled and said, we train tomorrow. I should be able to move again and at that time we will start, but for now I want you to be on guard duty for the family. God might send others to take care of them. The team nodded their heads and began to leave the room until Naruto turned back and asked, hey Kakashi-sensei, how long do you think it will be until Zabuza comes back? Kakashi looked up in thought, well, since he took a good hit from the fire jutsu and the burns, he must have gotten maybe 3 weeks. But since he has help that might know how to heal then 2 weeks minimum. They all thought about the time frame and left the room. Once he was alone, Kakashi reached into his weapons pouch to pull out his book. Dodba couldn't feel it in there. Where is it? The genin were walking down the stairs when they heard, where is it? Sakura turned back and asked in worry. Something happened. Nar just started to laugh lightly and pulled out a little book. Yeah, I took his book. Sasaki looked between the book and Nar. Why the hell would you do that, Dobi? Nar just stuffed into his pocket and walked past them before turning his head to say, payback for ripping my jacket. Later in the afternoon, Naruto was walking with Tsunami through the town on their way back after getting some groceries, even if it was very little. And even if on the outside, Nar looked like he was fine, on the inside, he was a mess. The second he got close to the town, he felt all of his spirit drained from the sadness, the fear, the hopelessness, and the depression coming from everyone around him. He felt like he wanted to cry from it, and he was holding back the tears from not only feeling it, but seeing it. Everywhere he looked, there was no light, no happy talk, no kids playing. Instead, the adults looked afraid to even be outside. Kids were on the side begging for scraps. Even if the people were going about their lives as best they can, they weren't living. As they kept going, a little girl who looked no older than 5 came up to him and held her hands up. Please, sir, do you have any food to offer? It broke his heart. In his eyes, he could see himself doing the same thing when he was younger, but the villagers kicking him away or spitting in face. Tears began to run down his face, so putting down the groceries, he reached into his jacket, pulling out 5 ration bars and giving it to the little girl. He knelt down and placing his hand on her head, he spoke in a broken tone, I'm sorry, I can't give you more. This is all I have. Share it with your family and be strong for them. I have come here to help, and soon you won't have to beg for food anymore. He watched as the little girl ran back to where he assumed her home was, and he wiped the tears from his face with his arms before he picked up the groceries and began walking. Tsunami had her own tears and how broken the boy sounded, and it seemed like he knew how it was to live like this. Naruto-kun, are you okay? Nar didn't turn his head. He just kept walking. Yeah, this is just another reason for us to complete this mission. They continued walking back to Tsunami's home without saying anything else. Once they made it back, Naruto sat alone at the dining table and with a determined look on his face read Enko's Ninja Tips Guide. Next day, Team 7 were in the forest close by Duzuna's house and Kakashi was in a happier mood when he found his book on the nightstand next to the bed. Kakashi just finished telling them about tree climbing and how it not only helps with chakra control, but it can increase chakra reserves. Each of them grabbed the kunai and looked at their tree. Naruto had a look of determination set on becoming stronger and ran to the tree. As he placed his foot on the tree and it exploded, launching him back before it began to fall towards him. He rolled out of the way, shocked about what happened. Kakashi breathed a sigh of relief before looking towards Nar. I think you added way too much chakra to it. Remember, you need to use an even flow of it to stick to the tree. Too little and you slip off. Too much and you will be launched away. His sweat dropped when he looked at the fallen tree or in this case make the tree explode. Sasaki had fallen on his back when the tree exploded and got angry at the blonde. Sakura ran into the tree since she lost focus and tripped from the sound. Both looked at the fallen tree and just sweat dropped at it. Nar just looked at another tree and slowly started to place his foot on the tree. He decided that he would use as little chakra as possible while let it flow to his feet. He figured better to slip and fall rather than be launched or destroy the tree. After seeing the 3 start the exercise, he decided to head back to the house so he could get some rest in red. After Kakashi left and Naro had made it 5 feet up the tree, he decided to make this go faster. So with a bit of focus, he made 50 clones and sent them into the forest to do the exercise. Sasaki looked confused at what the blonde was doing. Hey Dabi, what's with the clones? Nar kept his eyes on the tree in front of him. They are to help me train. Gigi told me that whatever the clone learns, I learn so using them they can help me learn something faster. Looking back at the fallen tree, he continued, I would have made more. But if too many do that, then it could destroy the forest. Sakura was impressed at the idea of using them to learn something, but Sasuke was furious at the idea of the Dobi learning tree walking before him. Nar could feel the hatred coming from the Uchiha, but he didn't care. He wasn't doing this to show off. He was doing it to become stronger. Strong enough to help the people in Wave. 2 days later in the afternoon, the three genin had made good progress with Sakura being able to get to the top of the tree first and Naruto being the second, but Sasaki has yet to make it to the top. Much to the Uchiha, Naruto had kept going even when made it to the top. During his training, one of his clones undid the henge and tried it in his fox form, which turned out to be easier for him, so he had a few of them to eat that way. Now, the team were at the table eating a stew that Tsunami had made. Normally, they wouldn't have this kind of meal, but thanks to Nar hunting a few rabbits and a wild pig, they had plenty to eat for a while. Nar would have enjoyed the meal more if it wasn't for the little boy that was standing away from the table and glaring at them. Inari looked at the shinobi as if they didn't belong and he made his opinion clear. You're all going to die. Everyone stopped eating when they heard this and turned to the little boy. Gato is going to kill all of you if you get in his way. Sasaki just scoffed at this like he could do anything. He is nothing but a weakling, he said before he glanced at Naruto. The Dabi-2 Inari just grew angrier like you're strong. You think you could stop him and be heroes. There's no such thing as heroes, and it's not like you know anything about us. I bet you all live happy lives without any worry or care. What would you know about the suffering we had to deal with? Nar had sat there listening to Inari as well as feel the kid's emotions, sadness, regret, anger. These were emotions that he has felt a lot. But when he heard Inari talk about not knowing what suffering was about, something inside him snapped. In a quick show of speed, he was in front of Inari, lifting the kid by the collar, glaring in his eyes, and in a low voice, he spoke, don't talk as if you know anything about us. You think we live a pampered, happy life. What the hell gave you that idea? Everyone was shocked to see Nar do this to the little boy, and were about to get them away from each other, but Nar kept going, ignoring them. You think you have suffered more than us. Inari was scared, silent as he stared wide-eyed into Naruto's eyes that looked like they were becoming a bit more slitted. Where are your scars from your beatings then? Huh, you didn't get beat, did you? Well, were you ever out on the streets begging for any food only for the people to kick you aside or spit on your face as they called you a plague? Tsunami at first thought that Naruto was talking about the little girl they met in town, but she realized that he was talking about himself. Did you ever go to sleep knowing no one be there when you wake up or even knowing if you would even get to see tomorrow? Everyone winced at this. Sakura and Sasaki did not believe that someone could live like that, especially in the village. Kakashi knew everything that Nar was saying was true and that he dealt with more than just that. He especially remembered the night of Naruto's 8th birthday. Nar brought Inari closer. You have your grandfather and mother, don't you? You have meals to eat, even if you have little. Nar then dropped Inari on his butt as the boy looked up at Nar and stared into a flaring blue slitted eyes. Don't think you have the worst life out there because there are people who have lives that are better or worse than you. Now that he was finished, he turned to the door and began walking out. I need some time alone. I'll be back later, he said before he slammed the door shut. Tsunami turned to Kakashi. Has that boy really gone through all that? She said before she looked to Inari who got up and ran up the stairs with tears in his eyes. Kakashi wanted to deny it to say that it was an exaggeration but he knew it was the truth so he nodded his head yes. And more in a forest clearing rag. After Nar left he made his way deep into the forest and let loose. He created a horde of shadow clones, and he himself, in his anger, dropped his henge and went all out against all of his hang clones, biting, clawing, and swiping his tails. He had removed his jacket and pants, leaving him in his shirt and boxers to allow him to move easier. Once all the clones were wiped out, he was panting with his tongue out until he put back the hench, got up on his feet, and put his pants back on, and sat down, closing his eyes to rest a bit. Damn it, I shouldn't have done that. But what he said hurt. He continued to lay there for 40 minutes just enjoying the sound of the woods. He made sure not to sleep since his henge would drop, and he was glad he did because he suddenly smelt someone coming. But it wasn't anyone he knew. Keeping his eyes closed to find sleep, he waited to see what this person wanted. The person had long hair wearing a pink sleeveless kimono with pale red edges and decorated with small plum-colored swirls that went to the ankles, a white obi tied in a bow, and a pair of light brown sandals with dark straps. The person had seen the sleeping boy and walked up to him slowly bringing a hand close to the boy's neck. Nar couldn't feel any ill intent from the person and jolted a bit when he felt a hand on his shoulder. You'll catch a cold if you sleep out here and without your jacket on. As the person looked over to the discarded jacket, Naruto sat up and looked at the person. Wow, pretty. As he looked at the person who had fair skin and a soft eyes with a smile that looked like she cared for many. Don't worry about me. I have never gotten a cold. As he looked at the person, he noticed a few things. The gentle air around this person reminded him of Hinata, and the person smelled of flowers and water, which reminded him of Ino, and that made his heart hurt a bit. The person got back up and smiled at him. Well, that's good to hear. May I ask what were you doing out here? Nar got up and rubbed the back of his sheepishly. I was letting off some steam and decided to relax a bit here. What about you? Why are you out here? I am here looking for these herbs. As the person lifted up a basket half filled with specific herbs. Oh, my name is Haku. Naruto stuck his hand out for a handshake. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. Do you want any help? I think I can find some. Haku was not expecting this but accepted the handshake. Thank you. And so Naruto started to sniff the air trying to find more herbs for Haku. During the time that they were picking the herbs, Haku decided to start up a conversation. Naruto-san, you said that you were out here blowing off steam, right? What were you doing? I saw some signs of a fight where I found you. Nar felt a little down remembering what he was doing and why. Well, I was training since I needed to vent. It's the best way I know how and it helps me get stronger. Haku looked over to the boy. You wanted to get stronger. Does this mean you have someone that is precious to you? Read this kind of speech so many times. Nar stopped for a second as images of people he cared about shot through his head and the last two stayed longer than the others. A girl with a kind smile, gentle pupil-less eyes, and dark blue hair, while the other image was a girl with platinum blonde hair done in a ponytail with teal green eyes and a bossy yet caring attitude. Yeah, I do, he said with a smile. Haku saw the smile and knew that whoever it was, he cared a lot about them, then you will become much stronger. I believe that if you have someone precious, you will go to great lengths to protect them. Nar smiled at this since he took what Haku said to heart. After an hour of searching and getting deeper into the woods, they finally filled the basket and Naruto was picking up one last one. Well, that took a while, but we got the basket full. What are these for anyway? Haku smiled at the boy. These are to help someone precious to me since he was hurt. Nar got up from the ground and smiled as he put the last one in the basket. Well, I hope this helps Haku-chan. Haku laughed a little at this before bowing to the boy. Thank you, Naruto-san, for helping me gather these. Nar rubbed the back of his head and smiled. You're welcome. As he said this, Haku turned around to leave. Hey, if you need any more help finding more herbs, I'll be here around the same time. Haku turned around and smiled. That would be very helpful. Oh, and before I leave, just to let you know, I am a boy. And with that, Haku left a stunned Naruto. And after he walked for a bit, he heard in the distance, I don't believe it. Unknown location. Haku entered a safe house much deeper into the forest. As he entered the room, he turned to enter another room to meet with his patient. Once he entered the room, he looked towards a bed that had one occupant who had burns all over his body and was grunting in pain as he tried to sit up. Zabuza-sama, you shouldn't be moving with those burns you have, otherwise you will be bedridden longer. Zabuza looked over to Haku with a glare. You think I would be able to sit still? When we lost a fight with a bunch of kids. Next time we fight them, both of us will fight. I want my rematch with Kakashi since we didn't finish and you can have the runs. Haku put the basket down as he grabbed some of the herbs and began to grind them into a save as you wish, Zabuza-sama. But if you want to get to your rematch faster, you need to stop fidgeting and rest. Zabuza grumbled under his breath something along the lines of cheeky brat. He slowly laid down and let Haku make the save. After a few minutes, Zabuza asked, how long will it take until I'm back on my feet? Haku paused for a second before answering, normally, it would take 3 to 4 weeks until you are back at full strength. But if you listen to me and rest, you will be healed at minimum 2 weeks. Zabuza was not happy at the time frame, but just kept his complaints in his head. Haku smiled and went back to making the save while also thinking about the blonde and the idea of meeting him again. 2 weeks later, through the 2 weeks that passed, Naruto had been training every chance he got. Sasaki had been able to finish the tree walking exercise a few days after Naruto, but it only made him angrier at taking so long. Kakashi was back to walking straight and had been focusing again on their reflexes and speed. But unbeknownst to the rest of Team 7, Naruto started working on different chakra exercises since the book he was reading had tips on improving chakra control. And he was working on 2 of them. One of them was to keep a leaf stuck on his forehead which was shown in the academy. But it was one of the days he was kicked out of the class and the other exercise which he came up himself was to balance on the base of a kunai that was wedged into the ground on only one finger. He came up with this idea when the book said that being able to focus chakra on one point would help, and the smallest and more focused the point was, the better at control you would get. He wanted to do it on the tip of the blade of the kunai, but when he did it the first time, he accidentally shut down his chakra and fell on the kunai, getting it jammed into his shoulder. It goes without saying that he now used the base of the handle. He had made 40 clones to work on the exercises in the forest, 10 working on the leaf exercise in his fox form and 10 in human form, while he and the rest of the clones work on the kunai exercise. Not only did he train when he could, he had met up with Haku in the same location every other day. And right now they were gathering up more of the same herbs that they had gathered before, and he was telling Haku about his pranking month against a clan in his village. He then had to get back to his compound in only his underwear. What made it funnier was that he was so embarrassed that he forgot he could get there faster on the rooftops or Shanhaha. Haku gave a small laugh at the prank. He never thought anyone would be able to do this to a clan. And although the pranks were somewhat harmless if done with seriousness, the boy could be deadly, but the blonde does not seem the type to even consider it. Your stories never cease to impress me. Your pranks seem expertly done, Haku said before a hint of sadness hit her. Something that Nar took notice of. Nar looked to Haku and wondered what was the problem. Hey, Haku, you okay? Haku just nodded his head. Yes, I am fine, Nar, but knew what was bugging him. Zabuza was almost back to full health and that he and his new friend were going to fight each other and most likely to the death, but he knew the boy was just another obstacle that needs to be removed in order for Zabuza's dream to be realized. Nar knew Haku was lying, but didn't want to bring it up since it might have been personal, if you say so. Anyway, you remember the bridge builder that I told you about? Seeing Haku nod, he continued. Well, turns out that he is almost done with it, and once he is done, we only get to stay here for a bit longer. So, I guess that we won't be able to talk after that. Haku didn't like the idea of the bridge being close to being finished because it means that the fight they would have was coming soon as well. Part of him wanted the bridge to be finished already so that Naro and his team would leave before Zabuza was healed. I guess that would mean we have to say goodbye, doesn't it? Nar shook his head as he smiled and said, I don't believe in goodbyes because to me it's always see you later. Haku heard this and felt like he would regret it. Sometimes it's not that simple. Maybe it would have been better not to meet. You might end up regretting it if something happens. Nar tilted his head, wondering why Haku would say that you should never regret meeting a friend. You should only regret losing one. Naruto then thought about Ino and how they fought, which caused a look of sadness to show. Haku knew one of them would be feeling regret when they met next. As he got ready to leave, he smiled at Nar. Well, Nar, I have the amount I need and my friend will be back on his feet soon, so I suppose that you won't need to help me finding more. Thank you. Nar just rubbed the back of his head and smiled. You're welcome, Haku. Honestly, it was fun helping you. You know, next time I come back to Wave, I could bring my friends. I know you would like them. Haku gave a sad smile. I would like that, Nar. And he turned around and began to. He walked. He turned his head and waved to Nar. I'll see you later, Nar. And I hope it's much later. Later at Suna's house, Nar had made it back to the house just as Kakashi started talking to the rest of Team 7. Everyone looked over to the door as Naruto walked in and Kakashi smiled at him. Naruto-kun, good that you made in time. I need to speak with all of you. Naruto walked up to his team. What's up? Kakashi's face grew serious and the team knew that they should give their full attention. Sakura spoke with a bit of worry in her voice. What is it, Kakashi-sensei? It's been 2 weeks since we saw Zabuza and I have a hunch that we should all be on high alert from now on. Nar got a little nervous at this as a few thoughts ran through his head. I might have to do it now. Sakura started to shiver a bit. I'm not ready to go through that again. What can I do to help? Sasaki smirked with the idea of fighting. Good. Now I can show that Kurish Shinobi who was the better fighter. Kakashi saw the reactions of his team and got up. Anyway, you all should be ready for a fight at any time since we are not sure when he might show up. Seeing that his team nodded their heads, he changed his demeanor and I smiled. Good. That night, Naruto waited until midnight when he knew that everyone would be asleep before he walked out of his tent and made his way into the forest. Making his way deep into the forest, he sniffed the air to make sure that no one was around and no one had been there before. He pulled out a kunai, put it in his mouth, undid the hinge, and got ready for what he was about to do. Ramatu-sama, I'm ready. Okay, kid, just remember that I'm still here as you go through it. Get ready. 10 seconds before I start. Stay strong, kid. Nar began to hyperventilate as the seconds pass. Closing his eyes, he took a deep breath as the last second passed and his whines began to echo through the forest, going through the shift to human for the second time. Nar was slowly making his way back to his tent since he still had a couple hours left until everyone else woke up. Why do I get the feeling that I'm going to have to do this a few more times in my life? At least it didn't hurt as much as last time. Not like it matters. It still hurt like hell. Once he made it to his tent, he gingerly laid down on his side on his sleeping bag and closed his eyes just to sleep. I hate this. He then slowly reached into his weapons pouch and pulled out the privacy seal. I didn't even need to use these. I guess I'll use this for next time. Next time. And with that, Nar went to sleep, too tired to even enter his mindscape. Meanwhile, at Zabuza's hideout, Zabuza was sitting on his bed with his against the wall, looking at Haku prepare whatever medical concoction he was using to ease the pain he still felt, but the pain was now more like a small ache rather than pain. Hey, Haku, how much longer until I can fight again? Haku looked over to Zabuza and after a few seconds answered, well, you are almost fully healed. 2 days until your burns are completely gone, and I would recommend resting for a day or two longer, so you are at full strength. Zabuza nodded his head, never doubting Haku's assessment of these sorts of things, and only had thoughts on his upcoming rematch. You won't get off easily next time, Kakashi. Haku went back to what he was doing with different thoughts. I am giving you all the time I can, Naruto-san. I just hope you will have left by then. What a couple of useless shinobi. Why the hell did I even hire you if all you were going to do is lay about? Both of their thoughts were interrupted from a man with shaggy brown hair, wearing a pair of small circular black glasses. He wore a black suit with a purple tie, closed-toed shoes, and leaning on an ornate cane. Haku scowled at the man as he said his name, Gado. God was accompanied with 2 thugs dressed as samurai, and armed with katanas. He walked up to the bed that Zabuza was sitting on as they both glared at each other. What the hell are you two wannabe shinobi doing? Your job was to kill that stupid bridge builder. And not only is he still alive, he is almost done with his damn bridge. If he gets that bridge up and running, I will lose my foothold on this land and lose a potential route for my business. Zabuza just scoffed at the small man. All he heard was a whiny underscore, that isn't getting his way. What do I care about your smuggling business? You're paying us to do a job and we are going to do it. So stop your whining. God was furious at this, not getting the respect he thinks he deserves and lifted his cane in his right hand, ready to strike at the man. But as his hand reached the height of the strike, Tsunbon's pierced his hand. Argado had dropped his can and brought his hand in front of him to see that Tsunbon pierced through his hand. Before he could do anything else, a hand grabbed his wrist and another roughly ripped out the S-bond before the first hand twisted his wrist enough to break it. The 2 samurai grabbed the hilt of their katanas and were about to charge, but they only made one step till their heads were cut clean off and sent flying. Behind them was Zabuza crouched down, his sword in his hand with his arm stretched out. Gado was on his knees, gently holding his broken arm as he felt something hit his foot. Looking back, he saw it was the head of one of his guards. Wah! Looking up, he saw Zabuza standing over him, and he began to sweat. Zabuza looked down at God before he crouched down to meet the man's gaze. We will get the job done. Now, leave before you lose something else. God scrambled to his feet and made his way to the exit. Before he was out, he turned to them, and in a shaky voice, he spoke, that old man will finish the bridge in a matter of days. I'm giving you 2 days to finish the job or you won't get paid. And with that, he left. Haku continued to scowl in the slimy man's direction until he looked at the bodies of the thugs. Zabuza, couldn't you have at least sent them out of the hideout? Now I have this mess to clean up. Zabuza shrugged his shoulders. They were vermin that needed to be dealt with. Zabuza began to move his arm to test his mobility. Well, it still stings a bit, but I should be able to fight soon. We strike in 2 days. Be ready by then, Haku. He made his way to the bed, missing Haku's small look of despair. I'm sorry, Naruto-san. 900 a.m. Nar hobbled into the house, getting everyone's attention. Tsunami looked worried at the boy. After the rant he went, did she felt a bit of maternal protectiveness for the boy, seeing as how Haya live a hard life much like the rest of them, but somewhat worse, seeing as from what she guessed, he was never treated kindly. Inari was afraid of Naruto after being yelled at by him, but he also thought that the blonde shinobi could really help them. If he went through all that and still came out to help, then maybe he could be the hero they needed. Suna glared at the boy, not really hating the boy entirely, but he was mad when one day he woke up to find that all of his sake was gone, even the ones he hid away. He couldn't even buy any to bring to the house since when he put them away in the cupboard that disappeared a few minutes later. He knew it was the blonde. He just didn't know how. Sakura looked concerned or her teammates since she has seen him this tired and beaten. Only once, wondered what he had been doing to cause him to be this way, but she didn't know how to ask. Sasaki just scowled, thinking that the blonde was doing some sort of training and wanted to know what it was so he could use it. Nar walked until he was in front of Tsunami before asking, is any of the food from yesterday still good? Tsunami nodded her head. Why yes, the stew we made from the animals you hunted for us is still ready. Nar nodded his head. Can I have the rest of it, please? Tsunami smiled and went to the kitchen to heat up the pot up with Nar following her. Kakashi watched the boy from over his book walk with Tsunami and was curious as to what the boy did during the night that could cause this, since he also remembered the time he came to the training ground like this. He shrugged the thought off before he went back to reading his book, thinking he could ask the boy later. As he was giggling perversely, he didn't see Tsunami come up behind him with a frying pan. Bang! Kakashi now found his face on the table in front of him and a welt inflating on his head. Tsunami bent down and confiscated the book Kakashi dropped. I told you before not to read this around Inari-chan, so I will be taking this away. Naruto was sitting at the table opposite of Kakashi with the pod next to him as he ate out of a bowl, and he looked at Kakashi as the man turned his head to the side while still on the table and started to cry while muttering to himself, I can never read in peace anymore. Nar just kept eating and little by little he started feeling better as he ate. After Nar finished the whole pot of stew, much to shock, Nar got up and told everyone he will be outside training. He also told Tsunami he would go hunting again to replace the stew. 2 days later in the early morning. Through these 2 days, Naruto spent his time training to get a bit more comfortable with his body. He found out that if he is able to eat a good amount of food, his body would stop hurting so much and he was now feeling back to normal, or as normal as he could feel. Though he now has a bad habit of sleeping in, as it was 10 a.m. and he was now in what was supposed to be Sasake's bed, since Sasaki was forced to sleep outside in the tent the previous night, snoring into the pillow wearing a plain white shirt and boxers that had fox faces printed on all over them. The rest of Team 7 were standing over his sleeping form as he continued to sleep. They all shook their head at him as they had tried to shake him awake, but he just swatted their hands away. Well, except Sasaki. He punched him in the face. Kakashi turned to Sakura and Sasaki. Let's just leave him for now. I'll leave a message with Tsunami-san to let him know that we are on guard duty for Suna-san at the bridge. Sasaki gave his usual hum and walked out of the room as Kakashi and Sakura followed him, leaving the blonde to sleep. Tuna's bridge. As the group made it to the bridge, they all grew serious when the second they stepped on the bridge, mist took over the area, which could only mean one thing. Zabuza. As they slowly made it to the area the workers were meant to be, they saw that most of them were on the ground. Sakura made her way to some of the downed workers and gave a sigh of relief, seeing that they were all just unconscious. Kakashi looked around to see if he could see Zabuza, but saw nothing. But he then heard someone speak. This way, copycat. Kakashi heard the voice further down the bridge and began walking to Zuna. I would tell you to go back, but I think you are safer with us. As they made it further on the bridge, they saw Zabuza standing in the center with the hunter Nin by his side. Kakashi walked a bit further with Sasaki walking with him as Sakura stood next to Suna. Well, Zabuza, looks like we will be finishing our fight this time. Zabuza hefted his sword onto his shoulders, looking over the group. Where's the blonde Gaki? He chicken out on this and head home. Kakashi shook his head. No, he had something else he needed to do. So, we will be dealing with you. Zabuza chuckled looking over to Haku. Well, don't think you will win this time. Haku gave a small sigh of relief, seeing that Naruto wasn't there and was glad that they wouldn't have to fight. Zabuza-sama. Should I deal with the others as you deal with Kakashi-san? Zabuza nodded his head. Yeah, deal with them, but they won't be much of a challenge. It's the blonde that you would have been worried about, since he came up with the strategy that got me stuck healing, but too bad he isn't here. He then turned his head towards Kakashi. Well, Kakashi, shall we get this started? Kakashi's answer was to launch himself to Zabuza, pushing him back and began their battle. Sasaki just smirked at Haku and started running towards him, pulling out a kunai and swung it to Haku. Haku pulled out a S-ban and blocked the kunai. You shouldn't rush into a fight with someone you don't know anything about. Sasaki just scoffed and pushed harder, making Haku backflip away before they charged at each, clashing again. Sakura stood with Tuzuna on guard duty as the other two battled. I hope you guys win this time. Back with Nar, Naruto's eyes shot open when he felt ill intent right outside the house. Getting up quickly, he heard someone downstairs kick the front door down and he bolted out the bedroom door and made it to the top of the stairs. He heard yelling from downstairs and he heard that there were 3 thugs harassing Inari and Tsunami. But when he heard Inari yell out, "Leave my mom alone," he jumped down the stairs, landing in a crouch position. He looked around and saw that one thug had Tsunami's wrist in his hand and pulling her out the door. Another was about to kill Inari with a katana, and the last one was following the one with Tsunami. As fast as he could, he jumped at the one with Inari and sent the thug flying with a flying roundhouse. When he landed, he turned and launched himself at the two thugs with Tsunami. Coming from the follower's back, he sent his elbow to the back of his neck. The thug holding Tsunami saw this happen and pulled the woman to him and brought out a dagger and brought it to her neck. Stay where you are, punk, or else I'll slit her throat. Nar stopped moving and stared at the thug. You piece of underscore, why the hell would you take her hostage? The thug just laughed. I was paid to take this woman anyway to get that old man to give up building the bridge. Who cares if I have a little fun with her before I head there? The faster I get there, the better chance I have to meet up with the mob God plans on using against that wannabe shinobi. Once we kill him and his partner at the bridge, we will be getting a bonus and then we can go do whatever we want in town. Nar scowled hard after hearing this. So God doesn't even honor the deals he made and you are nothing but a puppet. The thug held the knife tighter and pointed it to the blonde. Listen here, you pathetic brat. I will. Whatever he was going to say was interrupted as Inari jumped onto the extended arm, giving Naruto a clear shot at the thug's stomach. Nar la 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 launched himself to him and buried his fist into his stomach. Inari landed on his butt, looking at Naruto, who stood up straight. Nar looked at Inari as Tsunami went to check if her son was all right. You two all right? Tsunami looked at Nar and nodded. Yes, Naruto-kun. Thank you. Nar looked at Inari and smiled. Nice job, Inari. That just shows that heroes still exist because what you did is what a hero would do. Inari's eyes watered and he smiled. Thanks, Naruto-kun. Nar chuckled until a thought hit him. Where is everyone? Tsunami got back up and turned to Nar. They went to the bridge with my father to guard him. Nar remember what the thug said about a mob at the bridge. Oh no, I got to go help them. He grabbed the three knocked out thugs and tied them up and began to leave. Tsunami yelled out to Naruto before he was out the door and seeing him turn around, she continued, shouldn't you get dressed before you go? Nar looked down and saw that he was still only wearing a plain white shirt and his boxers. Ah. And then he ran up the stairs to get dressed. Back at the bridge, Sasaki found himself feeling like a pin cushion as his entire body was covered with S-bonds and surrounding him were mirrors with the image of the hunter Nin. Why don't you come out and fight me? The images of Haku shook their head. Your arrogance astounds me. You started this fight believing that this would be an easy battle, but after you started to lose, you make demands that you believe will assist you. Haku then launched more in bonds, aiming to end this fight, but was surprised to see him block a few of them. Taking a look at the black-haired boy, he noticed that his eyes had changed from pitch black to red with one tomo in each eye, a dujutsu. From the looks of it, it seems that it is an incomplete sharing. So it seems that he truly is an Uchiha. Pulling out some more sunbi he got ready to attack once more to end this fight. Sasaki noticed that he could see things more clearly and was able to see the sunbonds coming towards him. Seeing the hunter ninpas, he used the kunai in his hand to look at the re-election of his eyes. Finally, I have them. Now I can finish this fight. As Haku launched his Sensatsu Susho 1000 flying water needles of death, he saw the Uchiha prepare to block them, but knew that he wouldn't be able to block all of them. As the needles made their way to the boy, he caught sight of a horde of blonde, orange, and black appear inside the ice dome and block the needles from all angles, even if some of them hit a target, causing a few puffs of smoke. Oh no with Naruto. A few moments ago, Naruto had made it to the bridge to see that his team were in the middle of a fight. Sakura was guarding Suna. Sasaki was in a dome of what looked like ice panels and being covered in needles, and Kakashi was facing off with Zabuza and looked like Kakashi had gotten a gash going diagonally over his chest. Thinking on where he could help better, he chose to help out his teammates since it looked like Sasaki was losing. Rushing towards the dome, he made 30 clones and had half of them stay behind while the rest and himself went into the dome. Seeing needles head towards Sasaki, each of the clones pulled out can and made a circle around the Uchiha and blocked as many of the needles they could, even if a few were dispelled. Sasaki looked around him to see he was saved by Naruto. Damn it, Dabi. I didn't need your help. The original looked back at his teammate and just deadpanned. Two looked like I could throw a leaf on you and you would collapse. Nar then felt something foul from the boy apart from his anger and then noticed that the Uchiha's eyes had changed into the Sharingan. Oh great, now he will be even more arrogant than before. Taking a deep breath through his nose and turned back to face their opponent. Wait, sniff. Sniff. I know that smell. It smells like water and flowers. No. Dropping his arms and standing straighter, He looked at the mirror in front of him and looked into the mask. Please tell it's not you, Haku. All the images on the mirrors vanished, leaving only the one in front of the blonde as Haku pulled off his mask. Yes, it is me, Naruto-san. Naruto's clones all gaped as they dispelled, leaving just Nar, Haku, and Sasaki. Nar walked up to the image slowly until he stood in front of the mirror. So, the herbs you were gathering were for Zabuza. Then, seeing Haku nod, he sighed. So, you used me to help Zabuza then. Haku smiled sadly. If I remember correctly, you offered to help on your own. Sasaki, who was still standing in the center of the dome, heard what was said and came to a conclusion. Wait, Dabi, you helped the enemy. Nar turned to look at Sasaki. It wasn't like I knew Haku was the hunter nin I just helped. Sasaki just walked up to Nar and grabbed Naruto's collar. You helped them. It makes you a traitor. Haku, not liking their conversation being interrupted by the Uchiha, used his speed to show up behind the Uchiha and sent an ice needle into the back of the Uchiha's neck, knocking him out. Nar watched his teammate collapse to the ground. Ouch. I think he fell on some of the needles. Turning back to the mirror, he spoke again. So, you were hired by God to kill the bridge builder. Hakan nodded. We took the job needing the money that God offered. I am helping Zabuza as a tool to reach his goal. So, I ask you to stand aside so I may complete my task. Nar hated what he heard. Haku, you are not a tool. Taking another deep breath, he continued. I can't stand aside, Haku. I made a promise to help Wave and I never go back on my word. Haku felt his heart drop at the implications that the blonde made. Seems like it's time to say goodbye. And with this thought, the dome became filled with Haku's image once more. Nar looked panicked. Wait, there's something you need to know. He yelled, but it came unheard as he jumped back to avoid a set of needles. Finding himself standing over the prone body of Sasuke. Damn it. Making one clone and dispelling it. One of his clones that he made outside of the dome used the Kavarami to switch with Sasaki, getting him next to Sakura and to Zuna before dispelling itself. And now Naruto and Haku were the only ones left in the dome. Haku, you have to listen to me. He had to jump back to avoid the ice needles that impacted where he was. Bringing his fist up, he yelled at one of the mirrors above him. Haku, God plans on betraying you. This action cost him as a set of needles hit him in the back. Arc. Haku heard what Naruto said, but did not drop his guard. Clever using such a lie. But if you expect me to show mercy, then you will die, he said as he launched another set to the blonde. Naruto was still recovering from the last set that hit him and didn't move fast enough to dodge the next set. And now his sides were now covered in ice needles. A little blood leaked from his mouth, feeling that some of them had pierced deeper than the others. Damn it, Haku. I'm not trying to trick you. I heard one of the bandits he sent to Suna's house. Haku pulled out another set of needles. Why should I believe what you say? Nar just stood there as he pulled out a few of the needles. Why would I lie about this? I'm trying to save you. God plans on killing Zabuza with a mob. Haku hesitated for a second. He knew that God was scum, but thought that he wouldn't be too stupid to go against them. But he is the kind of scum to do that. And if what he says is true, he could be waiting for us to be tired until he strikes. Looking at Nar, he asked, what guarantee do I have from you that you are telling me the truth? Nar stood there and took a deep breath. I promise you that I am trying to save your life. Haku looked into the boy's azure blue eyes and saw nothing but determination and no lies. Dropping his raised hand that held his ice needles and slowly walked out of the ice mirror directly in front of the boy. Walking until they were directly in front of each other, he deactivated his ice mirrors and stood there looking down at the injured boy. I hope you don't break your promises, Naruto-san. Naruto smiled at this and lifted his hand to give him a thumbs up. I never go back on my word. You can believe that, Dad Bio. As the two of them stood there, they both heard the sound of birds chirping. They both turned towards the sound and saw Zabuza ensnared by a bunch of dogs as Kakashi stood a bit away from him with one hand held up with lightning in it and the other gripping the wrist of his other Zabuza-sama a few minutes ago with Kakashi. Kakashi was on the fence as he dodged another swing from Zabuza. If I don't end this soon, I'll run out of chakra and be open for him to finish off. Looking around, he got a small glimpse of the ice dome Zabuza's partner made. And even if he couldn't see who was in it due to the thick mist, he saw that it was collapsing. Looks like your partner is finished, though. Whether that's good for us or them has yet to be decided. Hope you're okay, Sasuke-an. Zabuza chuckled at hearing this while hidden in the mist. Then that means that your little genin are done for. Now all that's left is to end you. Kakashi didn't like the idea of what Zabuza implied. He pulled out a scroll from his pocket, wiped some of the blood on his torso onto his thumb, opened a good portion of the scroll, wiped the blood onto the paper, wrapped the scroll back up, and held it in both of his hands as he made a hand sign. We will see which of us ends soon enough. He then slammed the scroll to the ground. Kuchio's no jutsu. Zabuza was confused at the action since nothing was summoned, but kept his distance for the moment. After a few seconds, he heard something cracking, but couldn't see where it was coming from. It was only when it got loud that he looked down to see the ground around him was breaking. An instant afterwards, the ground exploded, and he found himself being restrained by a pack of dogs of different breeds. Damn it, what the hell? The attack on him had caused him to lose focus on his mist jutsu, and the area became clearer, but still slightly misty. Kakashi stood some distance from Zabuza, and from what he could see, his plan worked. After a few hand signs, Kakashi brought his hand down with the other holding the wrist. After a few seconds, the sound of birds chirping could be heard as lightning appeared in his hand. It would seem it wasn't my end that was coming, but yours. Zabuza struggled, trying to remove the dogs that were biting down on almost every part of his body, leaving only his chest and head free. I can't get free. Kakashi prepared his attack and gave one last look at his opponent. This is goodbye Zabuza. In the background, he heard someone scream. Zabuza-sama but paid it no mind and charged at him. Nar and Haku. Nar stood back as he saw Haku scream. And before he could do anything, he saw Haku create an ice mirror and jumped into it. Nar immediately knew what Haku was about to do and scream. Hhaa-ku-yu-yu. Kakashi thrusted his attack forward as his sharing eye saw an ice mirror pop up in between Zabuza and himself. And when he saw the hunter nin pop out of the mirror, he heard something. Hhaa-ku-yu-yu-yu-yu. Recognizing that voice, he flinched. Nar pierced, not sure how to write out that sound. Splash with Sakura, Suna, and Sasaki. Sakura was removing some of the needles still stuck in Sasuke's body. She was glad that Naruto had come to help. And seeing Sasaki, bloody and unconscious, told her how bad the fight was, but now that her second teammate was here, she felt like they could live through this. It wasn't until she heard a yell from within the mist. Hhaa-ku-yu-yu-yu-yu-yu. She tried to see where it came from, but she couldn't see through the mist to see what happened. She recognized it as Nar, and she became extremely worried when the clones that guarded her and the group all dispelled. What happened? Nar saw everything and his body just stopped. He stared wide-eyed as Kakashi pulled his hand out of Haku, who dropped to the ground and he wheezed out. Haku, he heard nothing. He felt nothing. He just completely shut down, standing there staring at Haku's prone body, eyes closed and bloodied. Zabuza felt his anger flare and struggled against the dog summons. And with every amount of strength, he ripped himself out of most of the summon's grip and swung at Kakashi, forcing him to jump back with Zabuza following, leaving Haku where he laid. They both landed close to Naruto, but he didn't react to them as they clashed with Kana blocking furious swipes from the massive sword. In a quick motion, Kakashi swerved into a spin when Zabuza's sword slid past Kakashi's kunai, and he moved his body to maneuver behind Zabuza, and he quickly put the kunai to his neck. You lose Zabuza. Before Zabuza could react, he heard a slow clapping. Cliché, isn't it? Further down the bridge. Turning his head, he saw God walking towards them. God kept his slow clapping, even though it hurt the hand that was injured. So, this is all the demon of the mist. I'm not impressed. Zabuza growled at the man that was still walking towards them. God, what the hell are you doing here? He asked, not in concern, but in sheer anger and disgust as he had a feeling why he might have been here. God made it standing a good ways away, feet away from Haku's body. I came to cut out my early investment. You see, you shinobi are too expensive, and I decided to that I would get a cheaper force. As he said this, bandits came walking forward, coming out of the mist. And after a few seconds, hundreds of bandits carried different weapons, swords, hammers, axes, a bat, sticks, and all of them looked like they were ready to kill. You see, I only have to pay this group a fraction of what I had to pay you, too. Now that you are weakened, I can have these guys kill you and save myself a fortune. God walked forward a bit more and saw the fallen body of Haku. Too bad this little is dead. I would have loved to see him die in front of me, and he kicked Haku in the side. Nar didn't hear any of what God said. He didn't know what the conversation was about, but his eyes continued to stare at Haku. And when he saw Haku get kicked, something snapped. His face of shock slowly shifted to anger. How dare you? His posture of standing straight slowly became a hunched crouch. How dare you? The color of his eyes began to fade, and after a few seconds, all color left them, leaving only the white, and they began to give off a white light. How dare youustaaard. Red chakra exploded from his body, swirling wildly around him, shooting in random directions, and a shockwave was unleashed. The shockwave knocked everyone off their feet and they all looked towards the red chakra that came from the boy. Kakashi had his eyes opened wide in panic. Nar, don't tell me the Kobe is breaking free. Getting back on his feet, he tried to think of what to do. Nar, you have to control yourself. Raagagh. Another shockwave forced him to cover his face and trying to keep on his feet. Sakura, Sasaki and Suna were blown away from the battle. And when the second shockwave hit, Suna and Sakura chose to stay down. Sasaki grunted in pain when his body moved, but he remained unconscious. Naruto had his glowing white eyes. Think of eyes from the gargoyles show when they are pissed on the shivering that looked back into his eyes. All of the swirling red chakra suddenly got reabsorbed into his body. Steam began to rise from his feet, and he began to walk towards God with every step, making the moisture under his feet to evaporate. After a few steps, he stopped and growled at the man, and then the skin on his face and arm peeled off, showing black and red underneath. His nails grew long and widened. The bones of his legs broke with a very audible crack before they reshaped into his fox legs with the fur growing back, but red and black energy could be seen on the tips of some of the tufts of fur. 5 tails shot out of his tailbone, and the energy covered 4 of them, leaving only his center tail, the one with the black streak on it covered in fur. The skin of his face and arms were now gone, leaving his face black, eyes and mouth shining with white light and his mouth made of the energy teeth. His ears replaced with his fox ears covered in energy with the only thing left and his blonde hair remained but with streaks of the energy flowing through some of his spiky hair. His shirt began to sizzle as patches of it burned away and his jacket turned to ash, showing his arms were covered in fur, and halfway up his biceps turned back into energy and his sash disintegrated. Goto began crying in fear and panicked as he scrambled away. A monster, get away from me. Turning to the bandits behind him, he yelled, what are you idiots doing? Kill it! Kill it! Kill it! Some of the bandits took short, shaky steps forward with some of them stepping back. Nar lifted his head and gave a screeching roar, causing a few of the bandits to panic and run away. The movement was caught by Nar, who in a rush of speed appeared in front of the running bandits and swiped his claw, bisecting 3 of them and shredding the off arms, legs, and heads of the rest. The bandits that were staring at where the monster was turned around when they lost sight of it and saw it was now behind them ripping apart the runners. Nar finished ripping the head off the head of the last of the runners and looked beyond the bandits and saw God. Goto in another burst of speed, sending a burst of wind through the bandits, knocking all of them on each other. And Naruto stood in front of God staring down at the man. Zabuza stood with Kakashi as they looked at the scene in front of them. Kakashi, what the hell is going on? Kakashi took a shaky breath looking at Naruto. I think God has pissed him off. Nar looked over the man and his instincts told him he should kill the man slowly, painfully, and watch every second of it. The man began to crawl away, but Nar grabbed his ankle hard with one of his tails, letting the energy burn his flesh. Lifting the man to dangle upside down in front of him, he tilted his head in curiosity as the sunglasses on the man fell, revealing the beady eyes of the man. Lifting his clawed hand, he reached for the man's left eye and slowly plunged his claws into the man's eye socket. Nar slowly plucked out the eye and held it in his hand. He lowered his head to look at the eye like it was the first time he ever saw it. Closing his hand, he crushed the eye with an audible squatch and let the blood cover the fur of his hand. His jagged teeth of a mouth formed what could be called a smile of glee. He turned his head back to the dangling screaming man until said man fell to the ground. Looking up to the tail used to hold the man up in confusion saw that the man's foot and ankle were still being held by it. But the man was on the ground, slowly crawling away as he whimpered. Naruto smiled again and sent the other 3 energy tails to grab the other ankle and both wrists, breaking the cast of his already broken wrist and brought him again in front of him and looked into the remaining eye of the crying man. Kakashi wanted to stop what he was seeing, but he knew if he made any move, Naruto might change targets. Sakura looked at the scene, trying her best to stay conscious due to the pressure she felt. As she saw what happened to Naruto, she couldn't understand what was happening. Her attention was brought somewhere else when she heard coughing and a splash of something. Looking over her shoulder, she scrambled over and began to think of what she could do to help. Naruto's mindscape. The forest of Naruto's mind were rotting with shadows crawling through the grass and fields. Kit, you need to stop. Kurama was at the moment plowing through rotted trees, trying to stop the smaller 5-tailed fox that erratically ran through the trees. Kit, if you don't stop, you'll lose yourself. Naruto's mind construct stopped and turned to Kurama, but Kurama could see that the smaller fox's eyes had no color. Oh no. And Nar jumped to attack Kurama, biting down on his ear. Don't make me do this, Kit. Shaking his head, he launched Nar off his head. Nar rolled onto the ground and got up and ran on all fours to Kurama, roaring as he leapt at the bigger fox. Sorry, Kit. And Kurama swung his tail towards his Kit. Nar looked at the man drop without hands and feet as the man convulsed but stay alive. Nar let go of the hand in his tail and moved it to the man's chest and slowly pierced into his flesh. Gurgle a gurgle. Nar lifted the man with the tail, getting glee at seeing said man flail his stubs. Blood flying everywhere, some of it landing on Naruto and evaporating from the energy. Gato was in pain from the loss of his eye, his limbs, and the stab. But the burning coming from said stab was increasing and spreading throughout his body. Gakar got turning his one eye to the monster, he slowly panicked a bit more as he saw it open its mouth, and the last thing he saw was the white light of its mouth. Naruto bite down on the man's head before ripping it off. He tossed the head towards the bandits since none of them dared move for fear of getting the monster's attention. Nar swung his tail and tossed the body away and stood there looking around him. Unfortunately, one of the bandits let out a gasp, getting Naruto's attention. All the bandits panicked and began to run, but Nar thrusted his arms forward and they extended to the running bandits until it pierced through 20 of them, 10 on each arm. The bandits gurgled out screams as the burning caused them to turn to ash. Lowering his claws to the ground, and getting a hold of it, he pulled himself to the group, and he began to tear them all apart. The sounds of screams could be heard by everyone on the bridge, so much so that some of the unconscious workers started to wake up. Nar now stood in a massive pool of blood and body parts, looking for something else to play with. His eyes landed on Kakashi and a small voice in the back of his head spoke. He did it. Turning to face the ninja. He killed him. He took a step forward. End him. He flared his tails and crouched to all fours and growled. Kakashi felt small from Naruto facing him. He felt like he was prey in the eyes of a predator. Oh no. He noticed Zabuza shuffle away from him. Coward. His attention was brought back to Naruto when he heard the screeching roar and in an instant he lifted his arms to block a tail sent his way. Kakashi slid on his feet, feeling that his arms become numb. Damn it. He had to jump away as Naruto came from the air, slamming his tails where he once stood. Nar, if you can hear me, you have to stop. Kakashi used all of his reflexes and skill with the Sharingan to duck under a claw swipe. But although his eyes saw it coming, his body couldn't react in time to avoid the knee to his stomach. The hit sent him flying and he rolled on the ground until he was on his back. GHH. Damn it. I don't have enough chakra. Use any high-ranked jutsu. And I don't have any seals for him. Opening his eyes, he saw Nar crouching directly in front of him and one of his claws coming up to his sharing eye. Before he could move, he noticed that Naruto stopped all movement. Even his tail stopped. Meanwhile, in Naruto's mindscape, Kurama slammed his claw onto a patch of black grass as his kit dodged and began to climb on his arm. Nar made his way to Kurama's face and swiped at the eye, blinding Kurama on one side. AARG. You little. Kurama swung all of his tails, creating a massive gust of wind, sending Nar away and crashing through a bunch of trees and leaving a crater where he landed. Kurama took this opportunity to quickly run up to the crater and reached in, grabbing Nar and trapped his kid inside both of his hands. Now, to end this quote. Kurama began to pull on Naruto's chakra, but Nar wasn't letting up as Kurama could feel clawing and biting done on his hands. Come on. After a few more seconds, a burst of red chakra exploded through the gaps of his fingers, and he lowered his hands down and opened them to see his kid unconscious and breathing heavily. Damn, Gaki sigh. That should get him to stop his rampage. Kurama began to look around the area now to wait for his mind to repair itself, but I need to make sure he doesn't remember what he did. Real world. Nar pulled back from Kakashi and grabbed his head as he gave a screeching roar. Kakashi looked at Naruto as he began to roll around in agony. The sound of the roars went on for a few minutes and began to die down. Kakashi saw that the energy that covered Naruto's body was receding. And once it was done, Nar stood there with all the skin there was red while his arms still remained furry with claws, his legs still like a fox, ears still long, and the 5 tails drooped down. Nar then collapsed onto the ground as Kakashi still sat on his butt in shock. Zabuza walked up to Kakashi and grabbed him by the collar. Mind telling me what the hell the boy just did? What the hell was all that? Kakashi shook his head to get his bearing back and looked from Zabuza to Naruto before his face got serious. It doesn't concern you. Getting out of Zabuza's grip. He lowered his hit aid and went to check on Naruto. Damn it, I thought Hokage-sama fixed this. Kakashi-sensei, I need your help. Kakashi turned his head to see Sakura calling him over as she knelt over someone. Damn it, Sasuke must be in real trouble. I should have enough chakra for one. Putting his index and middle finger into a cross, he called out Kage Bunch no Jutsu and made one clone. Make sure Naruto stays safe. Getting a nod from his clone, Kakashi made his way to Sakura. Zabuza scowled at the one leaving. Hey Kakashi, I'm not finished with you. Just to be stopped by the clone. Kakashi walked up behind Sakura. What is it? Sakura-chan. Is Sasaki okay. Sakura turned her head to look up at Kakashi. Sasaki-kun is fine. Just knocked out. But Sakura turned back. This guy is losing blood and if we don't help him soon, he will die. Kakashi then looked to who she was helping. And his eye widened when he saw who it was. The hunter. So guys, what do you think about this Naruto story? Tell me your opinion in the comments. And if you want more Naruto what if stories, make sure to subscribe to Universe of Naruto. Thanks for